All right. Let me just make sure that we are live. All right. So, just bring up some of these things. Check that we are connected. All right. So I take it, first of all, as always, just got to do an audio check, people. Don't want to just be talking to myself, as awesome as that may be. Nick, all right. Lars, I take it you guys can hear me clear. Ahlan wa sahlan. What is going on? Right. So sound is perfect. Shukran, Ayub, much appreciated. I'm always waiting for that cue just to double check that the sound is going through. Cool. Bismillah, inna alhamdulillah wa kafah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa, wa ala ibadihi alladhina irtada, wa man bihudahum ihtada, wa bi athari ahli al-Madinati iqtafa, wa ba'd, fa salamullahi ala al-qawm, ahlan wa sahlan bikum, people. All right, so it's all good. Right, welcome, people. Welcome back. Marhaban, ya jama'ah. Sound is perfect. I appreciate it, Nick. And right, Lonzetta, salam ya Maulan. You're doing it. Shukran, shukran. Musa Ahmed Khan. All right, Musa Khan, you're doing it. Big fan, Mufti. Shukran. I appreciate it. Scorpio, right. Gotta leave in a few minutes. No hay de que, no hay problemas. Right, I hope all's well. Shukran for dropping by. Juad. That's a rather unique name. Wa alaikum assalam. Currently in London. All right, would love to meet you, Mufti. Bienvenidos. Right, bienvenidos. All right, salam Mufti. All right, questions all going in. All right, people, can I provide my super chats? Yes, of course you can. Might have to pop out soon. Of course. You're most welcome. Shukran. Whilst you guys are just clicking like and share, I'm just going to bring up here. Right, let you guys just click like and share. I'll just bring up where is it? Today's file. There is. All right. So what I want to take a look at today, Allahu Akbar, loneliness or solitude. You decide, Quranic guidance. And I wanted to share in light of that. First of all, when I'm saying loneliness or solitude, why? Because I feel, and I'll share some of the thoughts on that in a moment and the details. But you see, we are living in a paradox. We are in a paradox, people. In an increasingly more connected world, we are ironically becoming more isolated. And I want to talk about that because people are finding themselves more and more on their own. And more people are finding themselves, young people especially, are finding themselves lonely and report to be much lonelier than, let's say, a generation before them when they were their age. And that's quite paradoxical given the unlimited ways and methods we have to remain connected with one another. But I want to, in a moment, share some words about that, because you see, it's not the phenomenon, it's the meaning that we associate to it that dictates our experience. And following on from that, I thought, you know what, let's share. There's a perfect story that comes in about a legend. Actually, many legends, shall we say, in that story, but this is centered around Sibawayh, the dawn of the Arabic language, and how he suffers this sense of this ihash, this wahsha, this kind of loneliness, deserted sense. And I thought that would be interesting to share. And of course, I'll give out the link a little later on, let you amazing, lovely and beautiful people jump on and have your share your thoughts and questions and whatever it is you want to share. So, right, what are we? Yeah. How come our lives this day and age are full of paradoxes and ironies? Exactly, Ayub. I'm 100% with that. And that's something I want to, speak about. Omar Rahman, we love you at the Rahman household. You see, a person is a vessel of what they carry within them. And in Arabic, as it says, Kullu ina'in bima fihi yandah. Allah. People beam and emanate what they have within them. So may Allah keep you always blessed, smiling, and in a state of love. Ameen. Right, so salam from Australia. Sami, you're doing it. Right, so what is the purpose of this guy's life or life? I don't know. Let's see. Right, so what is your position on Asma was-Sifaat? Look at this, going straight into creed, huh? Right, what is Jahangir Ahmed is really concerned with creedal matters. Es muy importante, claro. Pero, but the problem remains. Speaking of paradoxes, there are paradoxes all around us. You see, what are my thoughts on Asma was-Sifaat? I find it amusing that as humans we feel that we can capture God within words. Subhanahu wa ta'ala amma yasifun. Allah is above words. He cannot be captured or captivated, or truly his magnificence and his glory is far above and too transcendent to be limited within consonants and syllables. This is the problem, that the day you realize this, Allah, your connection with God will change. You see, وَمَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. Allah. They have not truly estimated God, as Allah says in the Quran. I would say, leave your limitations of these letters in an alphabet and connect yourself to the divine in a true, sincere, and loving manner. You will find him. Him here is just the pronoun, once again, very limiting. And in that, وَبِالْمِثَالِ يَتَّضِحُ الْمَقَالِ. You see, and that in and of itself explains the problem. So that's my advice to my thoughts on these topics. Yeah. Gold Globe, shukran, much love for the super chat. Dearly appreciate it. Right. Abdul Basit Balasani. All right, Balasani. All right, you're doing it. All right, so right. Agnostic atheist, हम वो हैं जो खुदा को भूल गए, तुम मेरी जान किस खुमा में हो. I love it. You see, that's like the shock element. You see, what people don't appreciate, what these poets are doing, they are presenting a paradox. Okay. And the paradox is where they are dealing with a topic which encounters profanity. They are dealing not just with any topic, they are dealing with the sacred and juxtaposing it with the profane. And then what they do is they turn, volta. Dame una volta, that's the... And with this turn, it shockingly, it creates a kind of existential tremor. So you see, hum wo hain, as John Elia says, jo khuda ko bhi bhool gaye. And you see, he's juxtaposed the profane with the sacred, the transcendental. And then he turns, tum meri jaan kis kuma mein ho. Bringing from the manifestation of one ayah, that وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ نَفْسَهُ, that insan is so, look at him, he gives parables unto us, God says. Allah, forgetting him or herself. What are they? Cheesy kya hai? Yet they speak unto us in such ways that bringing that parable, bringing, that the verse, that a parallel from the verse when Allah says, فَلَمْ نَجِدْ لَهُ عَزْمًا. Allah. You see, the thing insan lacked was, or where insan fell short, was determination, was that willpower. He had all the ingredients, just fell short. Allah, bringing that paradox. But then also the concept of that I'm creating that which Allah says that you have no knowledge of. Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamu. That this insan, badi cheese, it's something. He is a universe raveled within himself. There's a poem attributed to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh, an amazing, or definitely from an experiential perspective, one of my absolute favorites, which says, زعمت أنك جرم صغير وفيك أنت والعالم الأكبر. Allah, that you claim you are this small, minuscule, this insignificant entity, yet within you is the entire or the greater world trapped. And so, and I feel that this is what the poets do. And a lot of people, they catch the experience, but they fall short of explaining it. And they think the poet is sometimes trying to be profane or trying to be, to desecrate taboos and the sacred. But that's not what I don't believe that's what they're trying to do. I believe they are creating a paradox, and you experience it. And that's why they call a sha'ir from shu'ur, because shi'r is less about the words and it is more about the experience. And that's something to think about. Right, so where are we at? I see Saracen Mufti, what are your views on Mark Zuckerberg's idea of creating the metaverse? Should we embrace it, or do you think it will isolate us further? I see Saracen, shukran for this question. because I really wanted to discuss this on today's episode, and I think I'd actually forgotten. And min bab, as the verse of the Quran says, ذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And remind one another. It helps those of belief. Allah. So now, right, so Mark Zuckerberg has announced the project of the metaverse, and some tiny echoes and reflections are visible. So now when you load up WhatsApp, you can see it with the metaverse logo, and there's plenty. You can see Mark Zuckerberg's interviews, or he's got a presentation on YouTube explaining in his words and giving some glimpses into what this metaverse will look like. Surely, I mean, to what extent will it be able to live out all of those dynamics is a question, a serious question for, I'm sure, engineers, software engineers, and you know, design creators and all the kind of experts. But it also gives rise to many other questions which I'm more interested in. But briefly, just to, in case, so the metaverse is briefly put, it's an attempt to turn social media from 2D into 3D. And that doesn't just mean the holographic or the augmented reality perspective. So we're not just talking about, you know, wearing, obviously this is part of it, but it's not just about virtual reality. And I think this is what some people have confused, or maybe, I don't know, conflated, because there's a lot of criticism towards Mark Zuckerberg on this. And some people are trying to say, well, you know, what's so special about this metaverse? These metaverses are already in existence. And there's some top ones. And they, especially, and an example of them is like Fortnite. But you see, I think they're missing the point of what Mark Zuckerberg is trying to embark upon. He's trying to take this to the next level. And I can say that, you know, ladies and gentlemen, it is beginning to happen. Allah. We are now beginning to, and soon to experience, even whether we want to be a part of it or not, the illusory world, taking it several notches or exponentially higher, that it will now start to supersede our actual reality by far. So what he's suggesting is, apart from just social media, like I'm chatting to my friends, I'm catching up on newsfeed, I'm catching up on, you know, people's, what they're doing. You create these rooms, virtual rooms. These are for work. So you can, because what we have to accept that post-pandemic, the world atmosphere has changed. So many people, many companies have now realized, actually, why are we using all these office spaces? I mean, that's fine, but we're just going to have many people working from home. This working from home is now a thing to stay. So you could create an augmented reality or a virtual reality where you are all in the office working. But whilst in that space, it is a shared space. You could play music, you could talk to one another, you could see each other's avatars, you could break off into different rooms, you could go create your own space, which replicates your actual places of living. So I could create a room just like the room I'm in now, but it's a virtual room, and in that room I get people to come hang out with me, and we do. From there we could say, I tell you what, let's go to the Great Wall of China. And we go to the Great Wall of China. We say, I tell you what, let's go to, the pyramids of Giza. Let's go to the Eiffel Tower. Let's go to Milan. Let's go to Tokyo. Let's go to wherever you want to go. You just turn up and you have this sense of reality. You could do things like play games in there, but and you could move the games around. And what they're trying to do is, and there's obviously a lot of challenges, is to create an actual dynamism where, for example, you high five someone, you actually feel it, that you can. And this is now the emergence of, or at least the plan for an entire world to emerge, which is immersive. So those people saying, well, Mark Zuckerberg has, he's already lost the race to the metaverse because the metaverse already exists in games. That's true. It's a yes and no reply. That yes, it does exist in that sense for gamers, but it doesn't exist in this way. That it doesn't exist for all people who don't game, and it doesn't exist in the way that you create these break-off rooms and just lounge, that you just chill, or you work, or you have these board meetings. Let's have a board meeting. All right, guys, we're having a board meeting. We're setting it up in Shanghai. Right, here we are. This is now the work board meeting. We're having an AGM. We're hosting it over there. People may do their parties on these things. There will be currency on these. The world is actually becoming that, like they're making it 3D, the virtual world, like really 3D, like taking, I don't just mean optically. It's not just optics, it's the concept behind it. I think it's immensely powerful. It's, in a way, it's scary. And I think it ties in very deeply to tonight's topic of alone or lonely, because I think in many ways it's going to connect us with many more people, but it's going to create this deeper state of solitude and loneliness. And because you can imagine, because on these things you can be who you want to be. People can change their genders. They can change their skin tone. They can change. Obviously, they're not advertising it like this, but you can do it. They say you can express yourself however you want. You can, somebody's not happy with the way their body looks, for example, their body shape. They're overweight, let's say, but in this they happen to be totally ripped, and people see them like this, and they create a persona. You see, ties in much with how Jung speaks about the personas, because the persona is deeply tied and connected to the shadow, this element of our struggle with the nafs. So we're going to have people that are living these lives, like in rooms replicating their own rooms, in homes replicating their homes, having gatherings with their friends, but augmented and kind of maybe not totally super, but enhanced versions of themselves, prettier versions of themselves, more attractive, more beautiful, more talented, more how they see themselves on the inside. Now, this is going to create a chasm between that world and when they take this off. And now they have to walk to the shop. And they don't like who they are. You see, so it's scary in the deep psychological challenges and problems this is going to portray. I don't know how people are going to really get around that. And it's going to create, I think, a tsunami. It's going to catalyze a tsunami of identity, puzzles, conundrums, and problems coming especially towards younger people. So, yeah, but at the same time, this is inevitable. It's inevitable. Everybody knew this was going to happen. And we are now witnessing it in the making. It hasn't yet been launched, but maybe 5 years from today, this is how we'll be doing this, meaning with MALM. You know, I'm there, people are there sitting in a virtual hall or an auditorium, or the world is changing, people. Dosto, dunya badal rahi hai. So we've got, it's scary times. We don't know what's, but I think it's also important. I don't think there's any point in trying to say, should we not be a part of it? I don't think we'll have a choice. I think we may be less a part of it. I mean, think about Facebook. I'm not that active on Facebook. I'm not that active on social media. I mean, I am, but I'm at the same time, I'm probably definitely more involved in my real life than I am on social media. But it's already happening at a 2D level. People are already submerged in social media more than their real life. People, they order clothes only to wear them, take photographs, send them back. People, there's a really powerful clip on YouTube. Somebody made it about social media, that where people, they wake up and they do things, but just for the gram. They put on their jogging trainers and they put on their tracksuit and just take a photograph of their feet, putting them on, just say caption, going for a jog, and then they just take them off and go back to sleep. Somebody putting a breakfast together, a really healthy one, taking a photograph, saying that, brekkie time, but then just throwing it away and either not eating or just eating other things. And see, people, their lives, and then the likes drive them. It's the dopamine. See, this is it. The dopamine, huh? The devil is in the detail, people. Allah. Seriously. But I don't think we can avoid it. And even if we avoid it, people younger than us won't be able to. So, yeah. And, in many ways, it's like I said once before when I was asked that, what do I think of these narrations mentioning the Dajjal? And I'm not saying this in a kind of doom gloom way, but I said even then that obviously I'm with those scholars. There's a difference of opinion how authentic these narrations are, and even though many do accept them, there's some that have said these are not authentic, and I find more resonance with that. But I said that if they be true, then in my understanding, it would be referring to a time would come when humanity will find it almost impossible to distinguish the virtual from the real. And that is the great illusion, the great deception. And that is a Dajjal in that sense, that on this, because the form in Arabic is something that is excessively so. And Dajjala, because to cover up. And people would cover up, the Arabs would cover up with mud. They would cover up certain things. They would cover up even the camels if they got, they had a jarib. They had this kind of, this illness, this disease that afflicted certain camels, and you could see it on their skin, and they would cover it up with this kind of sand and mud so people couldn't tell. And this was the kind of Dajjal. And from here, a Dajjal, excessively deceiving sense of reality. And it is scary. It is scary, I have to say. I am frightful for people that are very young. I'm frightful for my own children and the world that their children will live in. Honestly, sometimes I think to myself, you know what, I'm just glad that, like, I'd be terrified to be young now. And I don't mean by young, like I'm obviously, I don't mean to minus my strength or to minus that I appreciate and that I love, the obviously life and its vigor, its kind of strength, it's everything. But to be young right now, I find the thought of it kind of so daunting. Not in a. It's just because it's just so much. And I, when I think about it, I'm somebody that's born and raised here in the UK. It's not like this is strange to us. It's not like we weren't familiar with these things. They were, the earlier computers when we were growing up. When I was a kid, there were the Spectrums and the Ataris, and we used to have an Amstrad CPC 464. Those of you that remember that, with the screen and you had to put the cassettes in, and then obviously the Super Nintendos, but it's the world has changed, and I find it daunting. I'm not saying I find it's horror. It's not horror, but it's just daunting, and it's tiresome to even contemplate it. And you just think, God, I don't think I could go through that. Yeah. So what is going on, people? Zubair Wakili, shukran, much love. Right. Right. You are searching the world for treasure, but the real treasure is yourself. I have a quote. I have that on today's quote, actually. See, it shows how the hearts are connected. Assalamu alaikum, Rahim. Wa alaikum assalam. I appreciate it. Shukran. Inshallah, gonna start memorizing the Quran. Is it the 15-line mushaf that's called hifz mushaf? I'm not sure. Generally the mushaf, what's popular around the world is the standard. I don't know, it's this print, which is usually like the Saudi print, and it's all. Let me just. $15, I think I counted. So this is the standard mushaf, which I do advise, if you're memorizing the Quran, to use that, but it's up to you. Generally, all mushafs throughout the world generally use that template. So that means that the page that begins with this verse will begin with that verse everywhere in the world, using that standard model of the Quran. There is a different model in print, which is the Indo-Pak model. And so, like in Pakistan, they have a different template of the layout of the Quran. So when I open, let's say I open any page on that, and I look at the left-hand page, top verse, if I go to that same in that mushaf, it will be a different verse. It's not. So it's organized. I think they have 14, or they have a different number of lines. So it affects the layout. And if you're memorizing the Quran, it's very important to have that continuity, that wherever you pick up a mushaf just means the Quran. The written Quran in Arabic is called a mushaf. And wherever you pick up a mushaf, there is continuity. So it corroborates your learning. That's important. So that's all I'd say. Otherwise, it's entirely up to you. When I did my hifz, I did it in Pakistan, but I insisted. I took my own mushaf, and it wasn't this one. I took a different one, and I would just memorize with that always. I would make a point that I would not read from the other prints, because I didn't want to confuse myself when I was memorizing. Because sometimes, even till today, I'll remember a verse and I just remember where it was. Like I'll remember that, that was on the left-hand page at the top. See, because we memorize things spatially and in connection to their surroundings. So it's important not to disturb that. Yep. So shukran, and may Allah bless your journey. Memorizing is incredibly powerful. And what it does, beloved, what it does is that it increases your capacity to memorize. Like the more you memorize, the better you get at memorizing. It's not, it's not like something you exhaust. It's like you kind of sharpen and hone those skills. they just become improved. You just get much better. And the Quran is something amazing to memorize. It's incredibly powerful. I would say, if you can, I don't know if you can, if you can, if you can learn some Arabic prior to doing so, that would be definitely very that would be great. It really has helped me till today. That, I mean, the fact that I did some Arabic, I mean, I learned my basic Arabic, which, to be honest, you can learn in 6 months to a year easily. You could just use Dr. Surti's book. I always recommend it. You know, it may come across to some people a bit on the dry side. I don't think so. I think it was fantastic. Obviously, like anything, there's room for improvements, but it, you know, you could get through it. I got through it on my own, and you could do that in 4 to 6 months, and then another 6 months as practice, and then you memorize the Quran. And what it will do is it will consolidate your Arabic, and your Arabic making meaning of the Quran will make that memorizing so much more precious, because you're actually understanding what you're memorizing. It's so powerful, honestly. It is one of the best things I ever did in my life, absolutely. And I'm not saying people have to do that, but if you choose to do it, do it. That as it's been said, that wherever you go with all your heart. Allah. Right. Nora, assalamu alaikum. Did you change the video setup? Is it different? There were 1-2 things I slightly changed. I don't know. Is it worse? If there's issues, let me know, and I can try and I don't know if I can fix them right now, but maybe for next week. You know me, I'm always fidgeting with things. Yeah, so doing it. All right. Clear. Shukran. Boys and girls just tuned in. What is Mufti talking about today? Different topics. I'll be talking about shortly about the topic of loneliness. We're just taking a look at some of your comments and questions before I get onto that. It's good on Facebook. No, it's fine. Oh, shukran. It's not Dr. Sulti. Dr. Surti. So Surty. I absolutely, I can't recommend his book enough. Seriously, he's an amazing individual, by the way. You know, may Allah bless him. Very humble. He used to lecture at Birmingham University many years ago. I'm pretty sure he's retired by now, and very humble man. You know, and yeah. How long did it take you to learn Arabic? Your Fusha is better than Allah. See, embarrassing me. Tukhajiluni, huh? So my Arabic, I studied Dr. Surti's book, and I finished it in about 4 months. I studied it on my own, and I must have been about 17 years old. And yeah, and I just do about half an hour every single day. I'll caveat that by saying, okay, I didn't have much of a life. and that became the highlight of my day. So I did used to work. See, some of us went through the tough life. We didn't get it easy like the young'uns today. So I would wake up, and after Subah, I would sit down and I would do my Arabic, which was like about half an hour every day, and then I would get ready and go to work. I used to work at the time in a brokerage, insurance brokerage. So I used to really look forward to the Arabic every day, and I used to, even at work, sometimes I'd be going over it in my mind and be writing it on these post-it notes. And just, yeah, and I must have finished that book in 4 months. I then contacted Dr. Surti. I remember telling him that if I could get some kind of test and certificate, and he was very kind. And this is years ago. This is going like, I don't know, 1997 or something. And I then, after that, started doing a few things in Arabic. I attended some, but I must say, within that first 6 months to whatever it was, I laid the foundations for Arabic. I did then go on to Damascus to study in Damascus, and that was obviously great. But I realized when I was in Damascus, my foundations for the Arabic language were already laid. I just needed practice, and I needed to improve, and I needed more vocab. But I understood things in terms of grammar. I understood why people are saying certain things. I may be like, oh, okay, you use that word and not this word. I get it now. But I wasn't having to learn. I was just having to increase the vocab. And the immersive experience was really necessary. And I really appreciated that. And I can be very talkative. And that helps in learning a language. And so I remember I ended up living with some guys that were, one of them was from Tunis and one was from Algeria, and great people. I wonder what came of them in time, but they for some reason their Fusha was really good. And one of them, who hadn't really got much secular education or religious education, but his Fusha was just incredible. I think he just watched so many cartoons growing up. And he was a bit of a vampire, used to stay awake at night. And I had this vampiric habit since God knows. I'm very nocturnal. I'm awake at nights and proper alert, like an owl. Yeah. So, and me and him would just talk. And we would just talk and talk and talk, and sometimes we'd debate, and sometimes because he was a bit Salafi inclined, but he wasn't this kind of hateful person. He was very, there was a lot of compassion and love still from him, and we would just talk about stuff, and sometimes we'd all debate, sometimes we'd just, sometimes we'd read. I remember I used to go through that storybook, Kalila wa Dimna. It's such an epic book for anybody wanting to study Arabic. And we would go through that. I would ask him, could you read this with me? And because the Arabic in it is so eloquent. And yeah, and I still have these memories like they were, like maybe they were just like a year ago or something. That's how vivid they are in my mind. And we would sit up at night, just me and him, and we'd be laughing sometimes, and the jokes, and that really propelled, my Arabic. But so, yeah, that's definitely it. Get talking, people, get talking. I need to do the same thing with my Spanish. I need to just be talking, because I'm at that stage where it's like I understand things, and if I read them, and if I can then say them, but I have to kind of, to say things, I have to think, because I don't speak it, so I don't practice it. So my kind of conversations in it are and sometimes I'll think, oh, which word do we use for that? And then when I hear it, I'll be like, oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Right. Nora, shukran, much appreciated for the super chat. This one, foundation course. Yep, that's the one by Dr. Surti. I think there may be some PDFs online. Other people do courses as well. I've heard great things by with Ustad Nouman Ali Khan's courses, Arabic courses. I've heard people say wonderful things, that it's really incredibly boosted their learning. So yeah, try out different things. The main thing is just try. Please reply, stay home, stay home. I'm from Bangladesh. I'm a man, 30 years old. I feel extremely lonely. I want to get married. What can I do? Get married, yeah. Winter baby. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Are winter babies nocturnal? Is this why Is that why you're saying that, clear, or is this for something else? Is that a thing, that winter baby? Because I'm born in January, so okay. That's interesting, if it be true. Right, so let's take a look. Fahad, much love, Fahad. Shukran. Abu Yeshua was pointing out that a normal person will figure out that Schrodinger's equation aren't equal to banana. So just like that, I know it's not Islam. I don't know what you're saying, but you've mentioned Schrodinger and his equation. So yeah, more power to you. My daughter is a January baby. Yep. See, yes. So Claire's saying that's what it seems to be. And Claire, with her wisdom, I accept that. Yeah, there is something, it's interesting. People say about these star signs, and they say about people, and I think the general prediction is it's just Barnum statements. They're not true, and where people just say, they predict stuff just based on your star sign. But what I do find interesting is the personality traits that they give. They seem to sometimes be above probability. I do find that interesting, like Capricorn. And sometimes when I've heard, and I found it like quite, amusing that, just seems above probability. And when you see that in people, so it's interesting. Maybe, people born at a certain time of the year, they do, it affects, because that's how they, maybe, Allahu A'lam. There's so many things in this cosmos that we just don't understand. But I'm totally against the the kind of horoscopes, because this, you see, all it does is it breeds superstition. And this is really what the shirk concept was all about, just freeing people from being enslaved mentally to irrational kind of manacles. So yeah, so people shouldn't really be paying attention to. So that's my advice. People do what they want, but my advice is the horoscopes and things. I don't pay attention to stuff like that and avoid it. But I do find the personality types associated with the zodiac signs to be, interestingly aligned more so above probability. And I think, wow, that's definitely interesting. No, I don't believe in star signs, of course not. But I do find, like I'm just saying, like you see sometimes, like a lot of people, and this could just be something, it could be something to do with the temperaments of the year. It could be to do with, exactly, these things could be to do with that. Like you find other things, like, your handedness is often can be a determining factor in life. That's crazy, isn't it, when you think about it? Like left-handed people, they are consistently a 10%, regardless of us, the world, removing this kind of, it's bad to be left-handed. Previously there was this this dexterity, but left-handed being, but there was this sinister, sorry, not dexterity, that was more with the right hand, the sinister associated with the left hand. But now the world has stopped that. Now they welcome you if you pick up the pen with the left hand. They're not going to say, put it down, that's the devil. But yet the 10%ers of the world, it's consistent. Left-handed people still remain at a 10% level, yet they are at times 50%, if not over 50%, of high kind of or significant people. I find that always very shocking, and that's like a Yeah, it's interesting. And it's not necessarily inherited, because I'm left-handed. I'm ambidextrous. I can use both hands, but I'm left-handed primarily. And my parents, well, I don't know. My mother doesn't write, but I'm assuming my parents are both right-handed. They're both right-handed as far as I know. And everybody else in my family is all right-handed. So it's not inherited, and it doesn't depend on your parents being that. Although I think if your parent is left-handed, you have a greater chance of being left-handed, I think. But it's still unpredictable. But I find that amazing, though, isn't it? Because it correlates with the opposite side of your brain. So, so right-handed people, there's more of a pressure, or they're more dominant on their left side of the brain, and left-handed people are more dominant on the right side of the brain. And even though the brain is obviously interconnected, the hemispheres, but still there's a dominance. And yeah, and I actually do think that, when I was 18, I learned to write with my when I was about 17, 18, with my right hand. And I think that maybe changed certain mechanisms in my brain. This is why I say to people that you should learn to write with your left hand as well. I know you'll look totally, you'll look like you can apply for a disability with the writing, but it'll get better. And I actually learned, because I used to take Arabic lessons, like when I mentioned, when I was learning Arabic. And I remember going to one of my teachers' homes, Sheikh Sidi Iqbal, a great, phenomenal scholar. Anybody who wants to learn Maliki fiqh should get in touch with him, by the way. Muhammad Iqbal lives in Birmingham in the UK, teaches online as well, I'm pretty sure, but he's a very private person. So phenomenal. One of the most, I would say, in the English speaking world, one of the most learned people, especially on Maliki fiqh. Now, I would go to his house. I remember writing, and he said to me, he said, he said, "Oh, you write with your left hand?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Why don't you write with your right hand?" And in hindsight, although it seems like such a silly question, one could say that question just seems like, now if somebody said that to me, I'll just burst out laughing, because I think, what a dumb question. But you know what? Sometimes I tell you, it is so. Some of the greatest achievements in life have been done based on ignorance, because being ignorant of the facts is what gives people courage to do things. On many occasions, I'm not saying everything. So like now, when he said that to me, I didn't know, left-handed people use the right hand, right side of the brain, and the right-handed people, and this is biological, and this is, I just knew I was left-handed. And he said to me, "Why don't you use your right hand?" And I said, "Huh? What?" And he goes, "Why not?" And I said, "Okay." And from that day, I just went home and I just kept trying to write with my right hand. Obviously, for at least a few months, it looked like a 3-year-old had managed to get a pen and go on. It was like, that was reminiscent of, I was about to say the movie My Left Foot, those of you that are old enough to remember that. But it was absolutely distorted, and it looked like some child doesn't know how to write. But then it started to improve, and and then it just got, in Arabic still. In English, I didn't write as much in English with my right hand, so I can still write it, but it's not as good as my left hand. But Arabic, my right hand is as good. Like, you wouldn't generally, like, even if I write English, actually, you wouldn't be able to tell, but I could tell that. So, okay, people, there you go. So this is what I say to people: explore. If you've got time on your hands, learn how to write with the other hand. You never know what you may unlock on the other side of the brain, because you're going to force your brain to create new neural networks. And this, the neural circuitry has to kind of explode. So you never know, it may change other aspects of your life qualitatively. Do you think the industrial meat is halal? Shukran, Sami, for the super chat. Much love. Your virus from Three Idiots was both-handed. Was he? All right. Epic movie, by the way. Epic movie. Left-handed people. Shukran, shukran. Aysar. What can we say? Do you think the Prophet's preference to use the right or left for basic actions has something to do with the development of cognitive ability in the brain? That's a very good question. Very good question. Raheem, do the left-handed folks tend to be more creative ones than the majority? I don't know if we are more creative, but I just know it's, I don't know, it's because then sometimes I do know one or two left-handed people that won't be as, because some people think, oh, if you're left-handed, languages are easier for you. But then I know some people and learning languages ain't as easy for them. They're left-handed, and so but the question, right, moving to, do I think industrial meat is halal? I think there's a distinction between, My Left Foot is a Beaut. Yeah, it's a very emotional movie, incredibly emotional. I was just saying that as a joke, that that's what my writing would end up like, but it's actually a very powerful movie. I watched it when I was a kid. Industrial meat, is it halal? Look, there's a distinction between something being halal, as in, is it permissible to eat, and something being good. So I agree that industrial meat, or the kind of battery farms that that exist, have cruel conditions, and they're not good or healthy. And I'm guilty of eating that kind of meat. Where you think, oh, I know, I'll have a burger today, and you get it, but you're not, come on, that burger's not going to really be from something healthy. It's going to be this battery kind of farm meat, and that's going to be just kind of like pumped up with steroids and just plumped, and it's kind of it's hyper produced. So what would take a normal hen, let's say, or a chicken to grow would take like 9 months. It would do this in several weeks. There's non-stop feeding. They just put the lights on and the chicken's bloody, they just keep eating. Chickens are like, they got like the chicken brain, which is just purely about instant gratification, which humans are as well to a great extent. And they just keep eating, and they just put the lights on, don't let them sleep, and they just eat, and they just plump them up, and they become, you see, they haven't even developed the muscles. So many of them collapse under their own weight. They can't even carry their own weight. That's how fat the chicken becomes. But it's not about the fatness. See, the same size of a natural organic chicken could still carry its weight. It's because it would develop with time, where it moves around and has strength. But the chicken just eats. It's on a roll. It just nonstop eats. And it's just fat as hell. And then they just weigh it and off it goes, and just chop it. And now you can imagine it's not going to be healthy. And I am guilty of that as well. I need to do something about that. I do think, I do think about organic, but then hopefully if there's more availability, because sometimes it comes down to that ease. You just think, I'll just get a burger from here, get this from there. And I suppose maybe we'll embark on an age soon where we can get synthetic meat, which is healthy, but not minus all and it's, it's, there you go. It's not even meat. So we're not killing the animals. I mean, maybe we'll reach that time in our lifetime. Allahu A'lam. All right. So So there is a distinction, just to be clear, between something being halal and something being good. Tayyib, as Allah says in the Quran, halalan tayyiban. So tayyib is something totally different. Just finished watching the Andalus series, best one on YouTube. I hope you can do something similar with the Abbasids one day, inshallah. I was thinking at some point I would redo that in a more, up-to-date version, and then start some historic things, inshallah. Did I miss a super chat? I got that one. Mufti, the Prophet said heaven under mother's feet, but some of us men grew up with controlling narcissistic mothers. This has caused mummy issues. Yeah, okay, yeah, I mean, you see, this is a difficult one, because, and I hope to, inshallah, do an entire episode on parental questions and permutations in one of the coming shows, inshallah. Right, so, but it is difficult because many people grew up with very, with tough love, shall we say, if love even can be fitted into that equation. And they had a very tough childhood. And it's difficult because, your childhood shapes your future life unless you intervene therapeutically, and it will require a deep sense of, further psychodevelopment and this kind of psychodramatic therapy, and reliving those moments, abreaction, what they call in psychology, and you'd have to go through this therapeutically and kind of heal those wounds to truly be healed, and to kind of just beam your essence, how it's meant to be, and to kind of individuate, as they might say, or to actualize, to reach a higher potential. So, and the truth is, most people can't do that in life. They're not that. Life just gets in the way. And then they bury it, which may work as well. And then let's hope many people, it's not been as tragic. Just for some people, their childhood is more tragic than others. On the bright side, the news is it can be healed. You can heal it. I definitely had a very tough childhood, very incredibly tough. And I would say that it really had so many bearings on my development as, in terms of my persona. But I would say I was very fortunate to have apprehended that, and to have therapized, and to have treated and healed, if not all, definitely, for the most part, all. So, but I get that most people won't be able to, so it's difficult. But what I would say, that now brings you face to face with the question that, but what about the parents and the relationship, because you have all these memories that are hurtful. And what I'm going to say is, and we will dedicate an episode to this in more detail, and dealing with other splinter questions. But I would say, look, just let it go. Let it go. That song, what is it? Is it the Elsa song, or Let It Go? When Layla was about 4, she used to always have that played, and just let it go. You will find in it your own healing. I can tell you that, you see, many of those people, those parents who have been incredibly difficult, they don't remember it. I guarantee you they don't recall it. And in fact, ironically, they recall things very differently in their memory. And you know what? This isn't about who's right or wrong. some things in life are just worth letting go. It's okay. You made it thus far. And you didn't make it this far to only come here. So you can keep going. But jettison, lose the baggage. It's only slowing you down. And, just let it forgive. As difficult as that may seem, that's what I would say. And sometimes it's not difficult. Sometimes it's not easy to build those bridges. But I would say in this episode, it being brief on this topic, if possible, do so at some level. If you can't, then at least try and lose the baggage and the resentment, and just be. That's what I would say. May Allah make things easy for you. It is a sad state of affairs. I've seen, especially in the UK, a lot of I've seen it especially with the Pakistanis, but I think it's with the Asians generally. So even the Indian, the Bangladeshi, I'm assuming it's kind of across all of these, that the upbringing is quite it's quite ruthless. And I don't know why, really, because the irony is many of those parents had actually quite a decent upbringing. So something, obviously it was the climate, but we'll talk about that another time. But yeah, that's my thoughts, that just try and aim for higher, the higher ground, inshallah. Right, let's take a look at, I have a question. Ameen, shukran. Ustad Wasim, shukran, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Allah. Somebody always beaming happiness and always smiling whenever you see him. Right, was the Prophet live and let live? Yeah, definitely. It doesn't, what I found in life, this is, let me share something with you, that even when justified, I found that carrying the burden of past, it always weighs down on you. You pay a toll, even when justified. So meaning somebody has clearly wronged you, yet, so you're justified to hate that person or to do something, but you pay a toll still. Nothing goes free. So I would say, as difficult as it is, seek inspiration, like in the verses of the Quran, where Allah says, and we've covered this in a previous lesson as well, about, and forgive. And those who forgive, Allah will recompense them with something unfathomably amazing. That's the, and it's difficult, but I think just do it. Seriously. On that note, I'd like to actually say a few words. Right. Last week I was speaking on, I suppose, wrongness. I can't remember what I was looking at, and maybe I think, was it a video somebody sent me, or was it on a news feed? And DawahMan, right? So yeah, so a little message for DawahMan. I saw, I can't remember what it was now, but it was last week. I think it may have just been a picture of something. And I was at the gym, and when you get distracted and you start looking at your messages, you start looking at your social media, And I was distracted, and the pre-workout is in, and the pre-workout, some of these, oh my God, they make you proper emotional as well. So you get into the zone. And I was going through these things, and I saw something, and it just triggered my thoughts about DawahMan. And I thought to myself, you know what? I feel in my way, I wronged DawahMan. Because I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? I disagree with him, obviously, polarized worldviews. And I'm sure he disagrees massively, as you can imagine, with me. But I felt, you know what? I had a principle that usually I used to only criticize people who'd publicly criticized me. Generally, for the most part. I mean, I think that's for the most part, I generally stood by that as far as I can recall. But there was DawahMan who I thought, I did really, did pick on him on many occasions. And to be fair, he never publicly ever said anything about me. So, yeah, and I just felt, in my heart, I just felt, Yar, I wronged him. Honestly, I had this kind of sense of emotion overcome me. It was strange because I thought to myself, I think I've only met him once. Years ago, we were at a charity conference. It must have been 2014 or something. And he was popular, but not as popular as he became. So he had a shorter beard, and I had no idea who he was. And somebody said to me, he's somebody who used to rap or do these kind of things, and he's become practicing, and the young people really like him. And I remember he went on just before me, and he said some very nice words about me. Wallahi, I have to say, very nice words. Like he spoke really highly, and this is obviously going back then, and I thought to myself, here's somebody that I did actually go on. So I felt that, and I thought, you know what, if I remember, I'm going to say this publicly. So, despite whatever differences of views, which obviously is entitled, and everybody's entitled, and I'm entitled to have my views. But yeah, man, I sent du'as his way and love, and may Allah keep him smiling. Ameen. I hope, obviously our views, I hope he changes his views. I'm sure as people hope I change my views. But I felt, yeah, zara hatke. I came off my principle. And so if he gets to watch this, I'll try and cut it out as a slip that, Yar, may Allah bless you and keep you smiling. Ameen. Yeah, so let's move on to the question. See, this is what being in the gym and the the pre-workouts do to me. Yeah. Right, let's move on, people. Right, let's get to today's. I want to cover this so we can start moving forward as well. I can share the link. Normally this, the heating, I'm just thinking, I've got a window open. It's like, normally I have this sweating as I'm like, it's way too hot here. And today I'm like, why is the temperature down? Right. Bismillah, people. So I want to tackle the question of loneliness or solitude. You decide. And before that, I'll remind you once again, if you haven't already caught up with the book lounge, that was last month's book, definitely well worth a discussion. This month's book is Awakening. But there's this quote I thought was really timely to include by Rumi: do not feel lonely, the entire universe is inside you. And in many ways it echoes the poem by Sayyidina Ali, which we cited earlier, that زعمت أنك جرم صغير وفيك أنت والعالم الأكبر. Right, loneliness or being alone. Now this is what I want to highlight, that look, we are in a world where we will paradoxically find ourselves being more and more alone. The pandemic is a prime example. But being alone is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, it is a good thing. It's a developing thing. Solitude is an amazing blessing. There's been several studies that have been conducted recently, especially with young people aged between 16 to 25. And they found, in fact, there was a study with over 50,000, I think maybe 55,000 people participating. And they found that people between that age range were to be more lonelier than other, whether you want to say generations or other peers much older than them or counterparts. And you think, well, that's strange, because these young people live in a world where they're ever so connected. Snapchat, TikTok, I don't know, games, and all these kind of this world. They live in a connected world. But that connected world is ironically isolating them. This is by their own self-confession. And they are being challenged by that, and they don't know how to deal with this. And this, sometimes it can lead to depression. It can lead to phobias of, not wanting to go outside, not wanting to meet people. It can lead to low self-esteem. It can lead to suicidal ideations. And may Allah make it easy for all of these people. And in light of that, I want to share some Quranic guidance and to explain that, you see, it's all in the mind, people. The world is what your thoughts make of it. Solitude is an amazing gift. But when does being alone shift into lonely? It shifts into that when people feel, because the person who's lonely, the person who's alone but doesn't feel lonely, what is different there? And it's the mind, because the lonely person can even be amongst people and feel lonely, because they feel that the indispensable ingredient is that they feel people don't want them, or people don't appreciate them or value them or love them. This is what creates that sense of loneliness. It's not being alone. But because we will find ourselves increasingly more and more alone, let's take a look at some guidance and some reminders. Here we've got in Surah Al-An'am, verse 94, Allah mentioning, وَلَقَدْ جِئْتُمُونَا فُرَادًا كَمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. That you have come to us at the end of life alone, as we created you in the beginning. Allah. See, this being alone was never, we were always alone. This life is a journey we undertake on our own. Other people they appear parallel to us. They may have concurrent journeys with us, but they are on their own journey as we are on our own. And Allah says, وَتَرَكْتُم مَا خَوَّلْنَاكُمْ وَرَاءَ ظُهُورِكُمْ. And you have left what we, and all these, everything that you collected, you amassed, that you acquired, it has been left behind you. وَمَا نَرَى مَعَكُمْ شُفَعَاءَكُمُ الَّذِينَ زَعَمْتُمْ أَنَّهُمْ فِيكُمْ شُرَكَاء. Those people who you claimed were so, that made your world for you, your acquaintances, your partners, business partners, your friends, your gangs, your spouses, nobody, ma narakum. Allah saying, we don't see them. Ma nara ma'akum. These people are not with you. You claim they were partners. Now, this can mean in many ways, but in this way, that looking at life. See, where are they? You were born alone. You pass alone. Right? And Allah says, وَضَلَّ عَنْكُمْ مَا كُنْتُمْ تَزْعُمُونَ. These claims you made, they have long gone. They've left you behind. Now, in many ways, this is it's an eye-opener. But it's also a blessing to say, look, these are not bad things necessarily. I mean, the primary verse may be speaking about partners and shirk, but by extension is talking about all kinds of partners as well. The verse, this is the superpositional nature of the Quran. Now, having people, having support mechanisms, having, whether it's going to be your acquaintances, your friends, your support, your spouses, this could be a powerful thing, but just remember, a wake-up call, it is ultimately you. Don't neglect that. And learn to be at one with yourself. And I'm going to speak about that, but let's take a look at this verse. Here in Surah Maryam, an amazing example of Maryam alayhi salam, who, when she, according to certain people, that she, at the time of labor, was on her own. فَأَجَاءَهَا الْمَخَاض إِلَى جِذْعِ النَّخْلَةِ قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا. Now, this is important. Now, some people say maybe Joseph was with her, but at this point she was on her own. Allahu A'lam. But the point is, she felt this loneliness. She felt it, because you can feel loneliness even in a crowd. And with that, the pain, and she's going through the pains of labor, and look at and then the exhaustion of going through childbirth, and the hunger, she's hungry, she needs food. And look at what Allah says, the verse after that was 23, verse 25, وَهُزِّي إِلَيْكِ بِجِذْعِ النَّخْلَةِ, that shake the tree, تُسَاقِطْ عَلَيْكِ رُطَبًا جَنِيًّا. Allah, that shake the tree. You need help, you need assistance, you've fallen down, you found yourself to be that the world around you has collapsed and you've fallen. You're on the ground, you're on your back, but you can still look up. So you can get up. The spirit of the Quran, Huzzi ilayki bijad'a an-nakhla. You want this? Put some effort into it. Tusaqit alayki rutaban janiyya. The fruits, the dates, they came showering down. Allah could have said, it's okay, here's food from heaven, we're going to make this happen, we're going to make other means. There's going to be a group of travelers passing by that have got so much food and they don't know what to do with it. They could be 100 means that don't even have to be so supernatural, but they could be many means, asbab. But Maryam alayhi salam is an archetypal role model for women to come. And what will people have? They will have struggles. So shake the tree. The food, it will come. Yes, you're alone, you're stranded. And guess what you have to do? Guess what? You have to still put the effort in. You have to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And then it comes. The glory, the fruits, it all, it unfolds magically. And that is such a powerful, inspiring verse. And the final verse I want to take a look at, this was from Surah Hadid. And I'll show this, that Allah's, look at how it's lining this up. that هو الذي خلق السماوات والأرض في 6 أيام ثم استوى على العرش. يعلم that Allah created the cosmos with all its magnificence. That وَيَعْلَمُ مَا يَلِجُ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَمَا يَخْرُجُ مِنْهَا. Now this is, see, everything that goes and comes out of the earth, that goes into the earth, Allah knows about it. Why is this important, saying this? Allah said He created the cosmos, so yeah, I guess we know He knows everything. It's reminding you what you're going through as well. He knows. He knows. He hears you. وَمَا يَنزِلُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ وَمَا يَعْرُجُ فِيهَا. You see? And what comes down and what goes up. Many of things. Whether you're looking at just elements, water, you're looking at the cycles of nature, or you're looking at things like your cry, your plea for help goes up to the heavens. And what does Allah say? You are in this moment of stranded loneliness. Allah says, وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ. Allah, He is right there with you. God is with you. وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ. Go wherever you want. God is with you. Such a powerful verse. Wallahu bima ta'maluna basir. And Allah surely sees that what you do. See, reminding you why what you do. Because you have to do something. Yes, Allah created the cosmos. Yes, He knows all of this. But He sees what you do. This is bringing it back. See, Allah, first of all, He shows you the cosmos, shows you everything. You're thinking, but I'm going through this. He says, I know you're going through that. And then you're like, but where is God? وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ. He's with you. Go wherever you want. Allah is with you. All of a sudden, that assurity, you see, because loneliness comes from this thing of not being wanted. Allah wants you. He has chosen you. Your story will always just be your story. There isn't a single person on this globe through humanity that has your story. Like your fingerprint, like your DNA, it is unique to you. And then Allah reminds you, Wallahu basirun. He sees what you do, meaning do something. Have a bit of strength. You'll get through this. And I thought it's so important to remind us, because when we find, especially people feeling in this age where things are becoming much more and more isolated, ironically, and they're thinking, well, damn, am I worth anything? Am I? Capitalize on solitude. Yeah. Let me just bring up these. So that was these verses I wanted to share for today. And this really sums it up as well. So beautifully, somebody had mentioned Maulana Rumi, and there's his quote that we carry inside us the wonders we seek outside us. And there you have as well, the lover is always alone. Even surrounded by people like water and oil, he remains apart. Yeah, so I want to share some thoughts now, tying on from that, but this about exploring yourself and solitude. This is a journey that I implore you to take. Okay? In this day and age, we need to sometimes just be on our own to understand who we are. Look at how the Prophet ﷺ would go off in this sense of mindfulness. You need to do this. You need to, because when you're with people, you're constantly just chattering. And you know what people, you see, this is the amazing thing. You see, the reason people say they want to find themselves, the reason you can't around people are too busy telling you who you are. Beginning by just addressing you, telling you your relation to them, telling you your name, your identity. See, how can you search within when you're constantly just being told who you are? You need to withdraw and go in search. You need to kind of just quieten. Sometimes, see, you may find yourself with conflicting voices. How often have we found ourselves saying to ourselves that, oh no, you can't do that, or if you do it like, won't this be like this? And then you're thinking, nah, but this, and you're answering it, or you're telling yourself, oh my God, you're never going to be able to do this, and which one are you? Are you the one telling you? Are you the one responding? I've got news. You're neither. You're the one becoming aware of it. So you have to connect to that, and I feel that this sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ has been so often not emphasized, that this being on your own. And I think that because the world is going in that direction anyway, we can capitalize on it, use it to discover, use it. It's okay. It's a rite of passage. It's important. And this is how many great mystics of Islam, they attained who they were like this. It's interesting because you see, one of the distinguishing factors between certain traditions of the world, like let's say certain classical ain't the word even, but people may say primitive, but let's say the shamanic, of the shamans and people like this that are pre-industrialization and pre-institutionalization. Many of their practices are very different to, let's say, organized religion. And I don't mean their practices, because everybody has rituals that are different. But what are some of the core founding factors that delineate, that differentiate? And that is that, you see, let's say to become learned in Islam, you have to learn stuff. You go through a syllabus, you pass an exam, you become something. You are now this, Maulana, Sheikh, Mufti, the Allama. This is how these people are now, because they've done all these studies, learned all this stuff, and passed. It's academic in its way. And some people, in some faiths, it may be more ascetic, hermetic. You have to abstain. You have to be a hermit. You have to then, you're granted these things. And you can find that, echoes of that in Islam as well. But you see, in some ways, you're just ordained. Like in Christianity, you're just ordained. You've become the priest. They've made you the priest now. in Hinduism, you could say there's a mixture of certain stuff. In Buddhism as well, you just try to have this enlightenment kind of procedure. But the difference in some of these other, what are seen as primitive traditions, is that there you have to have taken a journey of yourself where you've gone off. You've gone off into solitude. You've gone off into a forest. You've gone off into you've had to battle your demons and live there on your own. You've had to be in utter quietness apart from your own voices, where it's the only way out is you're going to go through this shadow. You're not, behind you, it's just insanity otherwise. So Tariq bin Ziyad said when he was on the Andalus port, he burnt the ships. He said, "Inna wara'akum al-bahr." Behind you is just the sea and impending death. And he said, La malja'a lakum illa siyufukum. You want to get through? You got to get through these people, this army ahead of you to get through. He's like, well, I'll see you on the other side. And this is how these people, what they do is undertake that, because they have to go through that self-discovery. You have to make it or it breaks you. And then you come through. And it's interesting, this is how the Prophet ﷺ did it. For years, he would just go off into solitude, his own journey. Rahmatan lil alameen. Allah. Showing us that this is how truly, yes, the other things come late. This academizing, this learning a syllabus and passing an exam and passing all, but you haven't really found the you. And yes, some mystics in Islam did, they did take this route. Obviously, Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, people like Jalaluddin al-Rumi, other people did take this route, but for many was just the academic route. So this is why I think it's important to understand, and we can, wisdom, wherever you find it, take it. That's what the teaching says. People say it's a hadith. People have questioned the chain, but kalimat al-hikmah dalatul mu'min, aynama yajiduha fahuwa ahaqqu biha. Wherever somebody finds it, he's more deserving of it. So, and I feel that there's so much in these traditions and in the early life of the Prophet ﷺ that we can use in this day and age, when we're becoming ironically pushed more and more, and especially with this metaverse coming, whenever it does in the coming years. I feel that people are going to become more isolated, and because young people don't see this in elders, they don't know. It's like a rite of passage, but they don't see it, and they don't see people doing it, so they're left to their own devices. They don't know what to do, and they just spiral inwards. And remember, their neuroplasticity hasn't even fully developed. That's around the age of 25. Your brain fully kind of fledges out. So it's still developing, and because it's weak, or not weak, but because it's still underdeveloped, and they feel depressed, lonely, low self-esteem, we have to be wary of things like suicidal ideations. May Allah make it easy for all. But I wanted to share that. Let's take a look at some of your questions. Right, mashallah, Rizwan Khan. All right, enjoy listening to Mufti, feel more enlightened. Shukran. May Allah always keep you enlightened and motivated. Right. Yeah, Metaverse, I heard this is in Spider-Man. Are we going towards that? Yeah, we are. I spoke about that a little earlier on today. We're going towards the Metaverse. I think it's a great time to invest in it, though. Yeah, why not, huh? If you're going to end up alone, you might as well be, at least you're like a millionaire alone or a multi-millionaire. I'm joking, people. All right, so what is going on? Thinking exactly, a lot of good in Buddhism. There is a lot of good everywhere. See the goodness, people. You know, it's amazing. We'll cover this in another session in more detail, but very briefly, there was something in the time of pre-prophethood, in the prophet's life. There was one of the battles, Harb al-Fijar. Some people say Fujar, and it was something that went on for several years, and the prophet partook in this battle. He participated, and he says in a hadith that about Harb al-Fijar that I was handling the arrows with his uncle, and then people disagree. Did he actually fire the arrows, or did he just prepare them? And people say maybe both, but the point is the prophet participated. It was a pre-Islamic battle between Qais Ailan and Kinana. And it's interesting because, when you study these things, you also start to see after effects of it in later history. You see these tribal pasts re-emerging when they start supporting one another again. It's amazing if you see the nuances. But following that, there was something known as Hilf al-Fudul, which was after that, but shortly after that, certain people in Mecca, they made this agreement that we are going to give refuge, safe refuge, and grant asylum to any person who has been oppressed. And any oppressor can have no sanctuary in the haram, in the sacred territory, so which is around the Kaaba and that part of the haram. So this was interesting because this is before Islam. So this is anything between 10 to 15 years before prophethood. And this became known as Hilf al-Fudul. And people disagree. Why was it called Fudul? Some people say because of the Fadl, the virtue in it. Some people say that there were at least 3 people involved in organizing this this agreement, because it became a pact. And several neighboring tribes kind of pledged their allegiance to it. And they say because several people were named Fadl, it got the name Fudul. The Fudul is the plural of Fadl, but whatever it was known as Hilf, the Pact of Fudul. And the Prophet says later, many years later, decades later, the Prophet said that he said, I was invited, because this took place in somebody's home known as Ibn Jad'an, and we'll speak about him as well in the future. He's a very, like an illustrious personality and character that appears pre-Islam. And even today, people, if you hear of people that are referred to Jad'an tribe, it's actually a sub-element of Quraysh coming down, but it's with reference to Ibn Jad'an, who was incredibly virtuous, and in pre-Islam he used to be very generous, but then he does have issues, and we'll speak about that another time. But at his home they have this meeting, and the Prophet says decades later, he says, I was invited to Hilf al-Fudul and I partook in it, in this pact, to help the vulnerable. And he says, وَلَوْ دُعِيتُ إِلَى مِثْلِهِ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ لَأَجَبْتُ. Says, and if anybody had invited me to the same kind of thing in Islam, I would definitely hasten to it. I would agree to it. I would respond to them. I would go meet them. See, what's interesting is the Prophet was not saying that this can only come from Islam. Other people, non-Muslims, could come up with things. And the Prophet was saying, Lo du'itu ila mithlihi fil Islam. I'm invited to it whilst in Islam. I would hasten to it because it was goodness. And I think these are the things that these nuances we sometimes forget, that there's goodness everywhere. Don't think that goodness is in these values, in these principles. It is not constricted to, just as I said in today's lesson at the beginning that, people try to constrict God with words. Goodness, you can't constrict it with words. So, yeah, wherever we see goodness, we should take it. Wherever we see wisdom, we should embrace it. That's my message. Right. What's your... So beautifully put. Shukran. Right. You should study try the study Quran translated by Hussein Nasser. Yep. Or the Quran translated by Muhammad Asad. Shukran. Right. Now. Yeah. There's different ways to, even in the Quran, you see glimpses, you see this kind of message in Islam as well, although it's not the main projection, because what happened with the Islamic tradition, see, you have to remember what people were in need of. Where Islam came, okay, so let's talk about this, about the central theme of Islam being justice. When Islam came, it came to a lawless part of the world that was eclipsed with inequality, with oppression, transgression, and just crimes. It was really submerged in that. So it was not the primary message wasn't going to be, let me rephrase that. The message at the vanguard, at the forefront, that was going to constantly echo was going to be about justice. The message of love and compassion and these things are equally important, but the message of love, you see, Allah constantly says in the Quran, so many verses, Inna Allah yuhib, Allah yuhib, Wallahu yuhib, Allah loves, constantly. But why was this not if you were to say the nectar of the message? It's definitely there, it's a powerful ingredient. But the nectar definitely emerges as justice. Because you see, when a person is oppressed, it's not, just saying to them, hey, it's all about love, or it's about, it's just love everyone. And it doesn't work for them because they are in a state of being oppressed and transgressed against. They have a yearning, an irresistible yearning for justice. And this, by the way, hasn't changed. This, even today, in most part of the world, in I would argue the majority of the world, is still the number one yearning for justice, because people have been wronged. So the Quran, in that lawless state, it pushed forward the message of justice, and then it nested it within mercy. And then it watered it with love and compassion. So this is why the central theme that emerges immediately is one of justice, because that was what was needed. It was the primary, fundamental, the crisis and the instinctual yearning that people had. So Islam brought that. Now, you see, and so this is why the ulama, most of the ulama, developed on the back of a legal platform, because legality was about establishing law and order. It was about attaining justice. It was about setting up rules. It was about structures in society. Remember, this is a society that had none of these. It was bereft of all of these. So when Islam brought this is why fiqh and sharia, it had complete ghalaba, overcame the deen. Like, this was the standing point of the deen. This is why the scholars, for the most part, were always fuqaha. They were jurists. Why weren't the scholars muhaddithin for the most part? Why were they not hufaz of the Quran for the most part? Why were they not qira'ah experts? Why were they not mufassirin? Why were they not? I'm not saying there were many of these scholars, but the majority were always legal jurists, because it was about setting up law and order, establishing rights for people, having structures, having rules in society, giving people this which they did not have. Now you fast forward to a time where in some parts of the world, like where we live, in the developed part of the world, alhamdulillah, there is order. I'm not saying it's perfect, but there is plenty of order. There are plenty of structures in place. There's rules. There's, guidelines. There's contractual nuances and fine points. There's bylaws. There's canons. There's so much of this stuff where we live in the world today. So you see, so what happens as one pulls, the other the other kind of relaxes. As the other pulls, this relaxes. So we find ourselves with law, with a reasonably good amount of lawfulness, with rules, with structures, with bylaws, with with guidelines, with all these points in society. In that point, we start to see the other element blossoming more of the deen, which is about compassion, about love, about humanity, because these things are there in society. See, people here, yes, I'm not saying they don't yearn, but it's not the same. In this part of the world, some people have had enough. There's too many rules. You park at this place, you get fined, you go into this lane, it's like this, they can't, everything is about technicality now. Somebody does this, they only get this happens to this person, this happens to this. It's like people are like, oh my God, I've just got so many rules and laws and bylaws, and they've got too much. Emphasizing just this aspect of the deen, people can do it, but I feel that is a mismatch, because people have that, their ruh, it yearns for the other side, for the love, for the compassion, for that humanity. So this is how these things balance out. So I think that's an important message, and I think this is why people sometimes mismatch things. And I absolutely understand, in many parts of the world, justice and that is still clearly, it's way ahead of the requirements. It is absolutely number one. So many people are still oppressed. And you're right. That's why in many of the Muslim countries, that's their number one thing. But when people import those same things here, this is why it doesn't gel as well. You see, you have to understand that the Sharia has a kind of tabi'ah to it, and it gels with its surroundings. So yeah, I hope that's of some interest. Right, okay. What is Barzakh like? Wow, this is a fascinating question. I want to cover this another time, because I was just reading Ibn Arabi's works on the Barzakh. It's absolutely it's not a large piece. I was reading it on actually script. Fascinating. It's just seeing how, and I wanted to read it, and I wanted to then read it in Arabic. This was in English. I wanted to then read it in Arabic and then kind of compare it, and then I can speak on it, inshallah. I think if you type in on Scribd, just Ibn Arabi and Barzakh, it should come up. It's an extract. I think they've extracted it from his, but they'll tell you which work they've extracted it from. Right. I was an ex-Muslim. I'm not even spiritual. Sure. You know, I saw one madrasa boy in Mulhid live stream. Sure. I'll share the link, and if you want to come on, you can come on and we can chat. That's absolutely fine. Yo, Mufti is live and I've got nothing better to do. Allahu Akbar. True. Many things in life, we just stumble upon them as kind of like happenstance, just as, I've got nothing better to do, let me watch this. Believe me, that's how many a great stories began. So, right, guys, speaking of stories, I want to share with you. That's a beautiful quote. So, we carry inside us the wonder we seek outside us. The lover is always alone. You know, before we move on, let me just share a quick poem. And speaking about perspectives, Momin Khan Momin, right, from Delhi. And he is one of the classic poets. He's a contemporary of people like Zawq and Ghalib. He's from the Dons, you know, Momin Khan Momin. Allah, what a name, huh? You gotta love it. Momin means believer as well. And he has a poem. He has in his poem this line where he says, "Tu mere saath hota hai goya, jab koi dusra nahi hota." And this line of his, it's so simple, but it's simultaneously so profound. Ghalib allegedly said to him that if you were to give me that one line, that one stanza, just this, I would give you my entire diwan of poetry. Allah. That tu mere saath hota hai goya, jab koi dusra nahi hota. That you are with me when no other is with me. And it could be understood just simply him saying to someone he loves, oh, when I'm on my own, I think of you. That's a very superficial way. But the depths that look, that you are with me, that when no other is present, not even myself, with your presence, my sense of self dissipates. There is nothing but you that is present. Allah. And in many ways that echoes that relationship with the transcendental divine. That you see, when I hone in and it is you, then it is just only you. There is nothing else. That what is the self? but an illusion. Nothing in essence exists except you. I think that's so powerful, and that's by Momin Khan Momin. And it is a beautiful ghazal, which he has several other kind of lines in there that are epic as well. And he says, one of them is, "Ek tum mere kisi tarah na hue." How is it? "Ek tum mere kisi tarah na hue, varna is dunya mein kya kya nahi hota." Says, it was just you that I couldn't have. Otherwise, what is there in this world that is not achievable? Oh, you can feel his pain, huh? I am Momin Khan Momin. He's doing it. Yeah, and it's on this loneliness and these things you have, you could contrast that with a bit more slightly melancholic loneliness of Firak Gorakhpuri, somebody much after 20th century, from India, one of the dons of Urdu poetry as well, we with great simplicity, he says, "Main hoon, dil hai, tanhai hai, tum bhi hote, acha hota." I love it. I love it. He says, "Main hoon, there's me, tanhai hai, there is loneliness. Now, main hoon, dil hai, there's me, there is my heart. Or tanhai hai, and then there is loneliness. Tum bhi hote, acha hota." If only you were here as well, it would have been nice. Allah. Honestly, just so simple, but it hits at the heartstrings. You can feel it. It's like a genuine sincerity in what he's saying. Wow. Reminds you of Einstein. He said everything should be as simple as possible, but not any simpler. So people, with that, let's... where is laugh always at the falling down, Habibi? Shukran, shukran. What? Quran, no other. All right, okay. Just put that person in. Right, so yeah, speaking of stories and people, I want to share with us an incident of a great epic scholar of the past. And this goes to show people that your world is what your thoughts make it. I want to speak a bit about a legend known as Sibawayh. Now, this story is about heartbreak. And this is why I said the world is what your thoughts make of it. Because really in life, you fall apart when your heart loses its fight and it falls apart. You lose the willpower. If you lose at heart, you lose in life, and at times you lose life itself. There have been many people who because of some kind of loss, they actually died. Maybe not imminently, but in the weeks to come, for example, maybe the months to come, that such a loss hit them so powerfully. And you see that with people that love other people, that only know other people. I saw with my own grandparents that my paternal grandparents, I saw that they had spent an entire lifetime together. My grandfather must have passed away at the age of, I think he must have been 93 or something, and he was still walking around and mobile and of good health given the age. Still had hair on his head, and even though he used to shave his head, a very pious person. Always prayed his tahajjud, always dressed in that traditional, used to wear the dhoti, the old style, the izars, and the pagadi, the old people who wear the turban in the villages like that. And I saw when he passed away, and within months, my grandmother passed away, and she was of a similar age, and she passed away, I think maybe 6 months after him, and that was the difference in her age with him, that she was 6 months younger. And you see this with people. May Allah bless their afterlife. I mean, and everybody who's somebody has passed away, may Allah bless them. And you see this in people, that they when they have this in life, and it doesn't have to just be people, it could be a passion. If that falls to pieces, they lose life, and that's it. They pass away. And such is the story of our guest tonight, the man, the myth, the legend, Sibawayh. That's an alleged picture of I don't know how they would have drawn that, and that's a picture of the city of Shiraz in Iran, which he, I believe, was from, but he resorted to at the end of his life. And that's his book known as Al-Kitab. He is the Don of the Arabic language. His book in Arabic grammar is called Al-Kitab. It's called the book. I mean, you can't top that. They say, what book did you write? He says, I wrote the book. Allah. And his name was Abu Bishr, Amr ibn Uthman ibn Qambar. But people know him as Sibawayh, and there's a whole debate on why. But he was the head of this whole Basri grammar school. He was a student of Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi. And he had a rival school, Kufa, and they disagreed in grammar, and they used to take digs at each other, and they had all this kind of rivalry going on. And his arch nemesis was Kisa'i, right? Ali al-Kisa'i, who Kisa'i is, if you recall, previously we've spoken about the qira'at of the Quran. And you see one of the people of the qira'at is Kisa'i. So Kisa'i is his arch rival. He has his own school of grammar, which they disagree on rules. And what happens is, once in Baghdad, Yahya al-Barmaki. Now you see, remember my story of the Baramika, the Barmakids, and how I spoke of how you had the different Ja'far al-Barmaki and all these stories at the time of Harun al-Rashid. Now this is at that time. Now you see in history how when I will tell these stories, they will then, you will be able to connect the dots, that who was where and how they were connected. And in your mind, this kind of mental map gets created where things come to life. So Yahya al-Burmaki, he one day he hears that Sibawayh is in town. So he says that, he says to Kasa'i was the royal teacher. So he was the teacher of Amin and Ma'mun of the Abbasids, and he was therefore close to Harun al-Rashid and the Baramika, because they obviously used to see him often. So he says, Yahya al-Barmaki says, you know what, let's arrange a meetup. Clash of the Titans. Allah, Allah. So we got these two heavyweights, these dons. Now, Sibawayh gets invited. Now he turns up, and when he turns up, the two kind of students, but you know, the followers, and they're next in the school of Kasai, the Kufi school. You have some other figures. He's like one of the founding figures. He's not the founder, there's proto-founders, but he's one of the key people, Kasai. But then you've got junior to him, people like Farra, who's like incredibly well known, and a lot of his opinions are in the books of grammar. You have Farra, and then you have Al-Ahmar. Now, these two are waiting there. So Sibawayh turns up, so they start, quizzing him. Start saying, hey, what's the, tell me, what's this? What's that? So they come on a bit harsh and strong to Sibawayh, and he doesn't like it. And Sibawayh is a bit of a private person. And what happens is Sibawayh gets offended. And he says to them, what is this? This is su'al adab. You guys have no manners, no respect. I'm a guest here, and you guys just trying to, basically, you're trying to kind of like bully me. Because what would happen is they would ask him questions, and he started to engage them. He'd answer them, and they start saying, ha ha ha, you got it wrong. And so he's obviously offended. He's like, what the hell? So what happens is Kasai turns up. Allah, equals, peers. So Kasai says, give us the room. Allah. So they're sitting there. Yahya al-Barmaki turns. Some people say this was done by Harun al-Rashid, by the way, but it makes no difference. So people are there in this room. So Kasai is sitting there. He says, Or Chaudhry. No, he doesn't quite say that, but he says to him, "Oh, Sibawayh, how's it going, my man?" He says, "It's good." He says to him, you wanna ask me? You wanna quiz me, or shall I quiz you?" Allah, look at that, straight to business, huh? Straight to business. So Sibawayh says, "You go first." He says, "Quiz me." He says, "Okay." He says, "What do you say in this mas'ala?" And this mas'ala came to be known as the mas'alatu Zumburiya. A zumbur in Arabic is a wasp. Okay. And he says, "What do you say about what is the qawl al-Arab? How should Arabs say?" He says, "Tell me, how should Arabs say this?" He says, "Kuntu adhun anna al-aqrab ashadda las'atan min al-zambur." He says, and this statement is irrelevant. It's just the kind of preamble. He says that, how should the Arabs say this? And the sentence is, "I used to think that the scorpion's sting is worse than that of the wasp. فَإِذَا هُوَ هِيَ." But lo and behold, it is the same. That's what he's trying to say. Lo mismo in Espanol. But he says, is فَإِذَا هُوَ هِيَ or فَإِذَا هُوَ إِيَّاهَا? Should we say فَإِذَا هُوَ هِيَ, that it is it? See, now both of them mean the same thing in Arabic. Okay. In Arabic, a pronoun, when it's on its own and not being acted upon, stays nominative. So like huwa, hiya, anta, anti, ana, these are just nominal pronouns which are on their own, detached. But if it's the object of a verb, they change. So it's not huwa, it becomes hu. It's not hiya, it becomes ha. So like kaifa, and if it's not anta, it becomes ka, ki, like kaifa halu ka, kaifa halu ki, not kaifa halu anta. And so here the question was, should they say فَإِذَا هُوَ إِيَّاهَا, or should they say فَإِذَا هُوَ هِيَ? Now Sibawayh says to him, فَإِذَا هُوَ هِيَ. Now Sibawayh is right in what he's saying, but technically, so what Kasa'i says is أخطأت, you're wrong. No, Sibawayh, doesn't just say فَإِذَا هُوَ هِيَ. He says al-Arab, the Arabs only say فَإِذَا هُوَ هِيَ. The Arabs only say this. This is where Sibawayh was actually mistaken. Kasa'i says to him, أخطأت. The Arabs also say فَإِذَا هُوَ إِيَّاهَا. And I have to say, for some reason, to me, that the ring of that sounds a bit better. Although what Sibawayh is saying is the baseline, how it generally is, like in the Quran, how it reads فَإِذَا هُوَ, فَإِذَا هِيَ حِيَّةٌ. Suddenly it is like a snake. It is a snake, or usually it is like that. That is true. But they could do this in terms of making it hal. So what happens is Sibawayh, now Kasa'i and Sibawayh get into this argument, and he keeps asking these same kind of questions to him with the same, like changing the wording, but the same structure. And Sibawayh keeps saying, no, it's only just this way. And Kasa'i says, haha, you got it wrong. Don. What kind of a Don? Doesn't even know this. So what happens is Yahya al-Barmaki says, you know what? You guys are the dons of your... If you guys can't agree, who do I ask? So Kasa'i says, look, there's Bedouin Arabs who have come to the palace, because they would often come as delegates to ask for stuff. Why don't you invite some of them in and ask them? They let them judge. They're the pure Arabs. So what happens is they bring in these kind of Bedouins who then say they agree with Kasa'i. Like Kasa'i is right. Now, this embarrassment, or this, what Sibawayh felt was a betrayal. Because Sibawayh felt, and this is how many grammarians state it, because the school of Basra dominated the scene afterwards. It kind of won the culture war. And so they say that Kasa'i had set this up, and he had even bribed those Bedouins at the door. Now, Allahu A'lam if that be true. I personally don't think he bribed them, because even later grammarians like Ibn Hisham and all these people write that that is actually how Arabs do say as well, even though it's rare. So it's true that it's not common usage, but it's not unheard of. So they felt that Sibawayh was in the right for dictating that this is how it should be said, but he was wrong for saying this is how it's only said. And so Sibawayh is so heartbroken with this incident. Kasai does say to Yahya al-Barmaki that, look, don't, he is a guest, he came here, don't let him go just like this, like give him something. He came here as a guest of yours. And so they say that Yahya al-Barmaki gave him 10,000 dinars, which is a hell of a lot of money in that day and age. And remember, I spoke about the Baramika and how they used to be so generous. So Sibawayh was so hurt by this overall experience that he kind of returns, he leaves people and recluses. He goes off, heads towards Shiraz in Iran, modern day Iran, and that was his hometown. And then within weeks, they say, he dies. And he was reasonably young. I mean, he wasn't that old, but they say he was so heartbroken and he felt so like I've turned up to this royal palace for once, and I'm, the epitome, what's the word? What's the apotheo? Right. So is it apotheostate or what? But I am at this, the summit of my passion. And this is the humiliation I face. I first get these people kind of trying to degrade me and trying to denigrate me. And then I get this and I'm insulted in this way. Even though he feels with Kasai wasn't trying to bully, but he feels that maybe Kasai set him up for failure and he bribed. This is what people feel. And some grammarians like Jeremy say, it wasn't fair. Why would they ask the Bedouin delegates? Because the Bedouin delegates are people who turn up to the palace, who are familiar with people like Kasai, who has royal audience. So obviously they're going to agree with him because they need something done, and he's the royal person. Sibawayh is a nobody to them. So they're going to pick sides. So other grammarians did say that, yeah, it is a tragedy, but you see this person coming to a death as a consequence of his passion. And I'll tell you something, there's a Maliki scholar centuries later, Hazim. What a slick name. Hazim. His name's Abu Hassan Hazim al-Qartajani. Okay. Al-Maliki, al-Andalusi. And he's from Cartagena, which is Cartagena in Hispania. It's in Spain. It's still there. It's I think southeast in Murcia. And it was called Cartagena, in many ways named after, in Tunis, there was a city called Carthage, which was Carthage, after the old Carthage kingdom from the Near East, the Persian kind of the offshoot that you had, the Carthage kingdom and that whole, and then there was a city in Tunis, and then you have almost this new Cartagena, this new kind of Carthage or Carthage being built in Spain. And it was in Muslim Spain. Well, I'm sorry, not built, but whoever built it, obviously before the Muslims, but the Muslims then inhabited and they lived there. And Hazim al-Qartajani, he has a poem, and he's a student of, and he's one of the most epic authors on Balagha, rhetoric in Arabic. And he's a student of Abu Ali Shalobin, who's also one of the most profound scholars of the Arabic language. And this is all around that Muwahhid time. And who is Shalobin a student of? Just to show you, to put it in that picture, Ibn Rushd. So just to give you a picture, because when I'm telling you these things, that mind map is connecting dots. And Hazim al-Qartajani, so they're around this Muwahhid time. So you've had, and we've spoken previously of Yaqub al-Mansur, and when he has that whole debate, and I did a whole video on this. And just after him, this generation, you've got in Muslim Spain, this Hazim al-Qartajani, and he writes a poem, and he brings this in to his Nahu poem, this whole incident. And he says, وَالْعَرْبُ قَدْ تَحْذِفُ الْأَخْبَارَ إِذَا. He says, وَالْأَخْبَارُ قَدْ تَحْذِفُ الْأَخْبَارَ إِذَا عَنَتْ فَجْعَةَ الْأَمْرِ الَّذِي دَهَمَ. So that the Arabs may at times drop the akhbar. Khabar is the predicate in a sentence. If they want to give a surprise, like this فَإِذَا هُوَ, this sentence, he's talking about this. He says, وَرُبَّمَا, he says, وَرُبَّمَا نَسَبُوا لِلْحَالِ بَعْدَ إِذَا. And maybe at times, even though it could be infrequently, they said it with a nasb, as Kasai was saying, after إِذَا. وَرُبَّمَا مِنْ بَعْدِهَا رَفَعُوا رُبَّمَا. And he says, and yet they may also do the other version. So as Sibawayh had said, and he says in his poem that أعيت على الأفهام لذاك أعيت على الأفهام مسألة أهدت إلى السيبوي الحتف والغمم. He says, and this is why this mas'ala it tricked people, like it puzzled people, and it led to the death and depression of Sibawayh. قد كانت العقرب العوجاء أحسبها أشد من الزنبور وقع وحماء. That the wasp, I used to think the wasp was, more than or that the scorpion was worse than the wasp, but they are whatever. He's just highlighting the mas'ala, and he's bringing that Zumburiya. He says wal jawabi, he says وبالجواب عليها هل إذا هو هي أو هل إذا هي إياها قد اختصم. That is it that the answer, should it be إذا هو هي, that is this how it should be, or هل إذا هو إياها قد اختصم. This is what they disputed and fought amongst. He's bringing this to the forefront, and he says وخطأ ابن زياد وابن حمزة. He says وخطأ, he says وخطأ ابن حمزة ابن زياد وابن حمزة فيما قد قال أبا بشر وظلم. Now this is the Maliki scholar saying this. He says that these people, they considered Sibawayh to be making a mistake. And he says they actually oppressed him. Because, even though, to be fair, Sibawayh, I think, was wrong on saying the Arabs don't say that, but they did oppress him. He says, وَغَاذَ عَمْرًا عَلِيٌّ فِي حُكُومَتِهِ يَا لَيْتَهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ فِي أَمْرِهِ حَكَمًا. And he says, and he really infuriated. Amr is the name of Sibawayh. Amr ibn Uthman ibn Qambar, Abu Bishr. He says Ali is Kasai. He says Ali really wronged him, and he kind of infuriated him. If only he didn't get the last say. كغيظ عمر عليا في حكومته يا ليته لم يكن في أمره حكما. And here he's taking the same names back to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu an and Amr ibn As when they had after the Battle of Siffin. And he's saying in the same way that Amr ibn As wronged Ali radiallahu an. And he's twisting the play on the names, because here Ali, in this case, Kasai has wronged Sibawayh, so Ali has wronged Amr. How Amr had wronged Ali over there. Ya laytahu lam yakun fi amrihi hakama. And he says that, and this is, he says, وَالْغَبْنُ فِي الْعِلْمِ أَشْجَى مِحْنَةٍ عُلِمَتْ وَأَبْرَحَ النَّاسِ شَجْوًا عَالِمٌ حُضِمًا. He says, and the worst of things is knowledge. When you are oppressed in knowledge, that the pain it causes, like, and by this, it doesn't just mean knowledge, it can mean your intellectual property. If you are oppressed and robbed of your intellectual property, your creativity, he says this is from the greatest of dhulms. And that's a poem by Abu Hassan al-Hazim al-Qartajani al-Andalusi, and Ibn Hisham brings that as well in his Mughni al-Labib. So this is such a honestly an amazing story over just this wasp. Wow. But what it did is it immortalized this word of the Zambur. Everybody, if you ever hear the word Zambur today, it's the mas'alat al-Zamburiya. So yeah, I thought I'd share that with you guys. Guys, I wanna I'll share the link and let's see what goes on. Maybe we'll wrap it up shortly. I'll see how much time. Okay, let's share the link. Invite. Let me just share the link. Mufti Ji, shouldn't you just explain Islam rather than the lullabies? Wow. I mean, to be honest, I love this stuff. And what it does is it brings Islam, the heritage of Islam, to life for me. And I'm trying to share that flame with you guys because, you see, to me, when I see things in Islam or I learn about things, it comes alive in this mind map that I have. That, oh, this was over there, this was going on, this was the context, these were the people. And when I share these stories with you of these people, I mean, there's obviously morals to the story, but what it also can help you with is creating that mind map of these people, because they contribute to your understanding of Islam. Like how you learn Arabic today has been influenced heavily by Sibawayh. Heavily, like al-Kitab is the basis of Arabic grammar as we still know it today. Despite some grammarians along the way kind of having their own, there was an Andalusi, this kind of Muslim Spanish, dare I call it, insurgency. But there was this thing, so that the schools of grammar kind of worked as you had these kind of prototypes, and then it evolves into the Basri school with Khalil and then Sibawayh. But then you're going to get rivaled by the Kufi school, by people before like al-Ru'asi and others, but then Kisa'i. And then after him, you're going to get al-Farra, you're going to get al-Ahmar. But here you're going to get people like al-Akhfash who do kind of move away a bit, but you're going to get al-Mazini. Now, this then triggers somewhat of a Baghdadi alleged school, some kind of an amalgamation of the two, allegedly al-Ambari and other people. But really, grammar is heavily dictated by what the Basriyin said. And then you do get this kind of insurgency centuries later, if I can call it that, dare I call it that, by the Andalusian, where you've got these people like Shalobin, you're going to have Hazim that I've mentioned, but you're going to have the likes of Ibn Hisham, al-Andalusi, these people, this kind of, you're going to have Ibn Mudar and his whole, what's that all about? That's madness. We got to speak about that someday. You had this, with the Mohad movement rising, and I mentioned in a previous incident, you see, now you can tie it all in. I spoke about Abdul Mu'min ibn Ali al-Gumi and how he has the Maliki fit books burnt and Ibn Zarqun stands up. And in shade of that, these events, the rise against the Maliki madhab was also a rise against other sciences. So you have people like Ibn Mudar al-Qurtubi refuting, writing against grammarians all of a sudden, saying these grammarians have lost the plot. And what are these ilalul ilal? And we don't accept them, and redefining grammatical rules. And Ibn Rushd tries to possibly refute him in his al-Daruri fi al-Nahu. Now, all this is going on. You've got other people, Ibn Kharuf, Ibn Asfur. These are all Andalusi, adding to the grammar. People study today the Ajrumiyya. The Ajrumiyya, to some extent, is Kufic, which is quite surprising. I am fond of the Kufic school personally. So this shapes your understanding of how you will even read the Quran today, because it's dictated or explained. Dictated isn't the right word, but it has really been, it's explained. The rulings of grammar in it are explained by these people, and if you know who they are, it shapes everything. And they have so much disagreement amongst them. Wow. There's a saying that if you think the fuqaha disagreed, you've got no idea how much the grammarians disagreed. So it's like, so wow, honestly. So I do advise people to learn it. It really makes everything come to life, these kind of things. As a convert I appreciate the lullabies. I'm learning a lot about history I've never heard before. Thank you. Shukran, Nora. Shukran. Much appreciated. You should do something on Kung Fu. Mufti is literally an encyclopedia on it. I wish. People, let me just share the link out again, and then let's take on some guests. All right. Who do we have here? We have Stephaan Jacques. All right.
Oh crap.
Stephaan, welcome.
Hi.
Bienvenidos. All right. Where are you joining us from, Stephaan? Am I saying that right, by the way? Is it Stephaan?
Yes. Surprising.
Stephaan.
Usually people get it wrong.
Oh, that's a British accent. All right.
I'm actually from New Zealand, which is kind of interesting.
Okay. Oh, I thought it was a British accent. Wow. Yeah.
No, that's okay. I mean, I don't have quite a thick New Zealand accent, but I've kind of grown up with a lot of British humor and stuff like that, so it's kind of yeah.
Okay. Wow. Shukran. It's a pleasure to have you on the live. Talk to us. Share your thoughts with us. How can we also reflect on what's in your mind?
Honestly, at the moment, it's a bit kind of chaotic, but
the mind often is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I'm at university, so I'm still quite young, and I'm still going through. My mind is still trying to.
What are you studying at university?
Engineering. So
engineering. Wow.
It's
quite a popular subject, I think, in quite heavy as well. I'm surprised. What brings you to this channel? I have to ask the question. I'm intrigued. So, I'm honored, and I'm also intrigued.
So originally, I happened upon your channel from the meme that was circulating. You're not there.
Oh, you're not a nutter.
But I looked at a lot of your I watched a lot of your streams and stuff like that, and I actually really enjoyed listening to your perspectives, and I thought they were really informative, and it was really nice to hear a different perspective, particularly from a Muslim, because I'm Christian, so it's a little bit different. But I find that for me, because for my kind of spiritual journey, I'm not so much wandering away from Christianity, but I want to journey through different kind of religious thoughts and literature, because I think it's really interesting. And I feel like there's a lot to learn, kind of both religiously and philosophically and psychologically about how to kind of just navigate the world and yourself. And I think that going forward in my life, I really want to keep that as a part of my like an integral part of my life.
Yeah. Wow, that's really good. I think, it's a an inner yearning. This that like you mentioned, this it's not about, you see, you're not interested in identity politics. Like you said, it's not about me trying to navigate from or to Christianity or these things. It's there's a yearning, there's something, a thirst that hasn't been quenched, and this is that path of consciousness, that path of just seeking. And it's a journey, and that is in many ways what faith is, and it incorporates these things, and exploring what other people have said. It's interesting because in many ways many people echo a very similar they say similar things. They may use different terminologies, they may use different angles, different filters. I was looking at a book called The 2 Million Year Old Self, and it's by Anthony Stevens, and he's a Jungian academic. And it's really fascinating because he's obviously putting all the works of Jung in there, but this whole concept that is so integral to analytical psychology, Jungian, the approach of this inner self, which is sometimes called the 2 million year old self, that they say that we still carry this within us, that we are this collective consciousness, and we're kind of connected. And it's interesting how really this, and they may say, well, this is where, for example, we still have that intimations of something before, some kind of, that we, without the us, we existed, but we kind of existed without us being the who we are today. Now, it's interesting, you could look at religions and they may say a different thing, but in essence they may say, well, that people were a soul, and the soul pre-existed, and the soul knew other souls, or that it had some kind of communication and it had some kind of experiences, let's say. And people may say, and you now incorporate that soul, so there has been a part of you that is millions of years old, but it's still you. And people may, somebody else from another tradition may say, okay, we're not going to say soul, we'll just focus on consciousness. And maybe that consciousness has always existed, and consciousness has always, and it's interesting, even when we're looking at the battling within the person, how people differentiate. Sometimes in the Islamic tradition, you'll have and even in Christianity to many extent, the self being this, this thing full of desires, this capricious, avaricious kind of, this thing that leads you to temptation, obviously by aid of the devil, but also in and of itself, this self. But then you'll have this higher kind of self, and people have always gone with these kind of splits. And even in modern psychology, you're going to see where they've tried to strip it of religion, let's say with Freud, senior to Jung, but still saying that, look, there's going to be the id, the ego, and the superego. And it's amazing that it doesn't matter. Human beings are still human beings. And really this journey, yes, there's a different filter that we all carry, there's different lens, different perspectives maybe. But in essence, the fundamentals of our journey are very similar, albeit having to be undertaken on our own and individually. Oh.
Yeah, I remember as I've been while I've been studying for the exams and stuff that I did finished relatively recently, I was kind of in the background. I was listening to a lot of Jordan Peterson lectures and stuff like that.
Yeah,
he's very fascinating to listen to.
I love listening to Jordan Peterson. Yeah.
But one thing that really resonated with me, I can't remember the video because I'm like churning through the stuff. But it was people have like a God-shaped hole inside them, and I felt that was really insightful because
wow,
it's that kind of people and then if you don't fill it, people try to fill it with other stuff, and like some people try to fill it with science, and some people just try to fill it with like hedonism and stuff like that.
And
I think that was really interesting.
That's so interesting and profound, because you see, it doesn't matter. Once again, language. It doesn't matter. Some have argued that there is a God gene within us from a very neurobiological perspective, that they've argued there's a particular gene perhaps, or some people have argued there's part of the between the temporal and parietal lobe, there's a region that correlates with spirituality, and even with going into DNA, that there's a certain gene, or that there's a hole, there's this vacuum, there's a void. But one thing that is for sure, there is a natural, irresistible yearning that we carry for the transcendent. And even where we have tried to strip humanity of this, they end up finding their own way there. It may be in some deformed way. They may take up some superstition. They may take up, how many people don't believe in God, but they will believe in some kind of karma, or some kind of like touch wood superstition, oh, nothing bad's going to happen, touch wood. People say this, and you may ask them, do you believe in God? Someone say no. But because we can't separate ourselves from the numinous. It exists in us. I think it's we can maybe try and mute it for so long, but then it'll just we have to do something. You got to put something there.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's part of what makes us people. And so like if you try and suppress it, it's like you're trying to suppress part of yourself. And so instead of like it's like if you try to be, because I kind of have these two, like I have like quite an emotive side and quite a rational side, and so it's like you just focus on the one, or you take precedent of one rather than the other, instead of consulting both. And I think that
absolutely. That's quite a mix, by the way, that you've got. Highly emotive and highly rational. That's
yeah, it's a little bit weird. So like when I'm conversing with people, sometimes I can be quite humorous and silly and stuff like that. But then sometimes I take a very rational, grounded kind of approach, and I think it's usually towards problems, like because like I guess as an engineer, it's like trying to solve problems, and so having a rational mind and being able to kind of navigate those issues really helps. But I think
that's fascinating.
I think
they say that a lot of our problem-solving abilities, that they go back to these heuristics, these kind of anchors, mental anchors that we have from childhood. So they say that, let's say, the kind of problem-solving ability that you develop as something like a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old, 9-year-old, this kind of age is actually, for many people, what will mostly serve as this kind of go-to for the rest of their lives. Now, what that means is, obviously, people become much more intelligent in life. They, they can become, like, you become an engineer, become a doctor, become a lawyer. Now, in their specialism, they're solving a technical problem. A technical problem will be solved with the technical sphere that they are in. And so if they're a doctor, they will look at it with medical knowledge, or an engineer, or a mechanic, or a lawyer, or whatever. But the moment they are removed out of their expertise and they face a different problem in life, that isn't anything. So a doctor facing a problem that's nothing to do with medical stuff, or an engineer that's nothing to do with engineering, that they say we fall back on the kind of ability that we developed as just young children in solving that. It's a very kind of like an instinctual, it's interesting and intuitive, this kind of intuition that we have since our childhood. I just thought that was
really
very
interesting.
Since you're saying about solving problems, it probably as a child you were probably someone very, you said like I always thought about trying to solve things logically, and it is probably maybe indicative of how you were as a child.
I remember my parents talked about how I would when I was a child, I would talk to them in like baby language, kind of like gobbledygook, but I'd have these really long and like really detailed conversations, and they'd just be like, "Oh yeah, good point, good point." And I thought that was hilarious. Yeah, but it's also one of those things. It's like you mentioned where you kind of fall back on a child. I remember in the Bible it mentioned like just from my perspective, but Jesus would mention like you need to be like a child, and I think perhaps maybe it's a similar kind of I like the word to describe, I guess, perspective, that you don't like. I feel like as I've kind of grown up, I've kind of started to understand, obviously, kind of how little I know about everything, but also, and then you as you kind of grow up, I feel like you do kind of lose something about being a child, and I think part of it is like you mentioned, but also I think it's also that kind of incessant questioning. I feel like for me, I think it's kind of trying to rediscover that, and like trying to find information and learn and keep learning and keep learning. So I feel like it's such a powerful tool.
Beauty. Yeah, that is the beauty. And you're saying, I was actually reading from and about some of the from the Gospel of Mark, from 4 and 5, and it's interesting that this whole thing is so reflective in the Gospels. This whole thing of the disciples constantly questioning. And they're questioning in this inquisitive curiosity. Oh, teacher, how would so in the Gospel of Mark, beginning by saying that how can the kingdom of God come? How can it come? Like where should they be kind of looking out? How does it come? And Jesus giving them this parable, and it's interesting because in the Quran as well, it mentions, I feel in many ways builds on from this same parable. And also when we're speaking about Jesus, uses the term ayah, which people sometimes translate as sign. I mean, ayah can mean a verse as well of the Quran, but when in the Quran, when it's used, sometimes it's people translate it as sign. But I think often it's more apt as symbol. And it's because how Jesus symbolizes and many things for them, and these things are symbolic, and obviously in the Quran as well, symbolic of God. So Jesus says, well, like the mustard seed, and he says that this is smaller than any known seed, and he says that yet when it is planted, he says it grows to outgrow all the other plants in the garden, and it has great branches on which birds can come and seek to nest. Now, this Jesus telling them this whole thing of, first of all, this curiosity that, look, what you're trying to seek, it's not how you're expecting it, but it will have a way of its own that's undeniably unstoppable, and how it will be a mercy, because they say that the birds, being the Gentiles, that they will also seek, benefit from this message of Jesus. And it goes on, and just building on from what you're saying about child, Jesus then going over to, what is it? I've forgotten what they call now. But the people, he goes over on the boat and calms the storm. But then when he goes over, they see this madman who he wanders around by tombs, and they say he's possessed, and obviously they're looking to Jesus, and Jesus speaks to this person and says, well, he says to them that, who are you? And the famous, that I am Legion, for we are many, that my name is Legion, for we are many. And then he says to cast them out, and there's some pigs near the sea, and he says that, and he's casting them into those pigs, and as he says that, the pigs kind of go into the sea, and it appears as though many of them have drowned. And it's interesting that this whole thing, this whole phenomenon of what's being discussed in Mark 5, that from a psychological perspective, where they discuss it, that many psychologists speak of this as Jesus, like you mentioned, speaking to them in a way that, you see, like you said, like you have to access that child because that child is what is hurting with them. And in many ways here, they were seeking this salvation from something that they feel is in them. And when it's in them, the only way to save them is it has to go out. And so even many Jungian psychologists and others discuss this, that from their perspective, that it's not necessary that there were these demons, that, you know, I am Legion, my name is Legion, for I am many, that this, obviously Legion, Rome as well, you know, the whole Rome kind of greater backdrop thing, but that by showing them that, look, it's been casted into these pigs, because people believe that if something has gone in, that it must come out. And Jesus addressing that in a symbolic way that would work, and it did work. And it's interesting. I mean, I just, because you were mentioning how Jesus addressing this kind of inner child, and because I was just reading about this whole thing recently, I thought very fascinating. But yeah, so yeah, that's wow. So what else, Stephaan, is going on in your thoughts? Anything you'd like to share?
Yeah. Gosh, I can't really think of anything.
See, we've put, there you go. That's that. There you go.
We've unpacked a lot of information.
I love it. But shukran, I appreciate everything. You know, just coming on, sharing your thoughts, telling us a bit about your story. You know, I relish kind of and really and cherish as well people's stories, and I think, I don't know, maybe this is something just with age, it's more, I find it fascinating, even if to people sometimes they seem mundane, but it's a person's story. And yeah, and I appreciate you coming on, sharing your thoughts, and you know, just where you are at life. So shukran. Well, I mean, I appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, like Jesus used parables, stories to kind of convey messages. I think people's stories, or like you mentioned, they're also very powerful. And
it's symbolic of something much greater than them. You see, it symbolizes, because the story is so much greater than the person. It's
you don't remember the people, you remember the stories about them.
Allah, so true. So true.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And
very
it's
well
like
said.
Authors are not, you don't remember how the authors were, because you didn't live there when they were living, but you can read their books, you can access their thoughts. And I think that's interesting, isn't it?
That is very profound. Thank you for that, Stephaan, and shukran. Thank you once again for joining us tonight. Do stay in touch, and all the best. Right, we'll catch up.
It was very nice to talk to you.
Likewise. Take care. People, that was Stephaan Jacques from New Zealand. All right, so let me just take on another guest. Are we getting too late or what? We've got Nawaz Matani. Nawaz Matani? Am I saying Motani? Nawaz, assalamu alaikum and welcome. Where are you joining us from? You're on mute. I think you're on mute. Or your mic isn't connected. Or shall I'll tell you what, nope, not working. I'll tell you what, I'll remove you and then try and connect it and pop back. All right, people, Nawaz Motani, something going on with the mic there. There was, let me see, I'll share the link again. So what do you mean? So thanks for your subscribership, Ken. Okay, I don't know. Right, okay, there's the link. Let me check. Has Motani fixed the issue? Let me add him back. Assalamu alaikum. Nawaz? No. I don't. I think that's odd. It's definitely. It's not on my end because your mic isn't muted from here, so it must be on your end. Right, maybe have another go or something. No, and I'll add you back. Maybe if you disconnect your mic, sometimes what it is that when you're connected, when you fit it, it gives you an option to select. And if you select like headphones only, then it doesn't let you use the mic. Depends if you're using a PC, that is. Okay, so that's okay. Is Nawaz Mike has probably gone. Yep, it has. I'll tell you what, I'll share a link if anybody else is bandwidth. No, I don't think it's bandwidth issues. Otherwise, we can wrap this up if it's all good. If you do come in, remember to activate both your mic and the webcam. So once it's both active, it shows as active on my thing, then I can bring you in. Okay, so if you activate them both, and I can then see you on this thing and bring you in. All right, so that's right. So okay, we've got somebody else jumping on. Can't see the webcam. Activate, if you can activate the mic and the webcam so I can see you. I can't. Right. So people, nevertheless, it's been good chatting. That was interesting. Recently, there's been quite a few people from New Zealand, and so we've had some. I must say, I'm very intrigued and a few non-Muslims that have come on now, and that's like really wow. Okay. All right, we've got someone here, Haydar. Haydar, let's bring you on. Oh, assalamu alaikum, Haydar.
Assalamu alaikum, Mufti.
I think you have to dip the camera.
I'd rather not for now, because there's a few people watching. But no, Mufti, I've watched your videos before,
Okay.
alhamdulillah, and I've been watching you for a very long time, for a few years now, since you was a very small channel. I've been watching you.
Where are you joining us from, Haydar?
From Manchester.
Oh, from Manchester, UK. Allah, shukran.
Yes. No, I wanted to discuss with you because I found a comment a very long time ago, and I found it quite interesting. You was talking about Sayyidina Ali and Sayyidina Muawiyah radiyallahu anhu, and you was discussing. Well, in the comment you said that Muawiyah radiyallahu anhu, basically he was in the right and that Sayyidina Ali radiyallahu anhu was in the wrong, and it was due to his fault that these kind of errors.
Sorry, who was saying that?
You.
Is this going to be that clip that you, as in the you me? I was saying that?
No. It was in the comment.
Oh, a comment was saying that.
You wrote a comment on YouTube, Mufti Saab.
I said this in a comment. No, so okay, I'm not aware of saying that. What I said, I've actually had a very lengthy clip. It was like, I think it was like a 2-hour video on it. So in my thing, I discussed the whole situation. I took the conscientious objector stance that I don't personally, with many, which was the majority of the tabi'een, not parting with any side, not saying, because I said like war, I feel, was always going to just lead to disaster and crises. Like war was never going to be a solution. So that was my stance. I didn't stand by taking any of the sides. So I don't know, maybe that comment, I don't know which comment it is, but
right. Well,
yeah.
We'll even put this to one side, because I know we'll talk about kind of like the Maliki kind of madhab as well. Then, because I had a few questions on that. So you know, personally, I completely, I think the Maliki madhab is a very interesting madhab because it's kind of two aspects to it. You have like kind of Ahl side, the intellectual side, and you have more of the kind of Naqli perspective of the Maliki madhab, with like Ibn Abdul Bar and all these other scholars. But if we check, for example, individuals like Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, or Malik himself even, they do seem to be pretty anti-Alid. Like, so, you know, I mean, how would you view those kind of statements? I mean, like Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi supporting Yazid.
He doesn't support Yazid. You know, this is one of those kind of, I don't know, we don't call them now, like people say, Chinese whispers, but this is one of those things that I don't know what they call it today, the political correct version of it, but that it starts off as a rumor, and then by the time it ends on the other side, it's become a totally different story. His Awasim min al-Qawasim does not say any of this stuff that they attribute to him. His book is in print. He actually praises Sayyidina Hussein immensely, and he does not do any of these things that they say, and he actually disses Yazid. But you see, what it is that people later on, some people paraphrased his argument. So one is what he's talking about, and his argument gets paraphrased by later people. And some people say Ibn Khaldun paraphrased it, and he shouldn't have paraphrased it in that way. So, but Ibn Arabi has never said those words. So some people say something like that they attribute to Abu Bakr ibn Arabi that his argument was that Qutil al-Hussein bi sayfi jaddi, that Hussein radiallahu anh was killed by the sword of his grandfather, meaning the Prophet. Now, Abu Bakr ibn Arabi, as far as I'm aware, has never said anything like this. But in fact, in his Awasim min al-Qawasim, he discusses about the calamities that occurred after the Prophet had passed and amongst the Sahaba. And then obviously he discusses many of them, and amongst them the issue of Yazid and Hussein radiallahu anh and all these things. Now, his viewpoint in the end is the viewpoint of Ibn Abbas. It was the viewpoint of Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah. It was the viewpoint of Ibn Umar radiallahu anh. It was the viewpoint that he felt that it was that what Hussein radiallahu anh, him going out, he shouldn't have gone, because he says that Ibn Abbas and these people gave him what was more strategic advice. Like they said, if you go, you're going with just women, family, you're going to get killed. Don't go. And he says that he didn't, like he obviously went. And so Bakr ibn Arabi says that he sides with those people. The other thing is he does touch upon the debate. Now, this is where it gets a bit emotional. He touches upon the debate that does the ruler have the right to crush uprisings. So he says that, well, a system is in place and they do have the right to resist it with force. So this is as far as I'm aware, of his Awasim min al-Qawasim. But when he begins, like, in fact, I advise you to read it. Like, he actually begins, like a whole page, he just praises Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu anh. He speaks so highly of him. He says that, you know, this, and it's nothing like how people make him out that, you know, some people think he's like some kind of hated. That's ridiculous. Nobody could hate. No Muslim truly, I mean, I'm not talking about those who are alive in that time fighting, because obviously if they were fighting, I'm sure they're going to have problems with each other. But no Muslim afterwards, really speaking, could ever hate the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I think that's you know, it makes zero sense. I do think that what's happened is people have sometimes, you know, they've kind of got a bit you see, the problem is, I think it's rendered a bit of confusion, because the family of the Prophet, like let's say the Shia, they will say the family of the Prophet were oppressed. And they will now have a bad guy, which is like Bani Umayyah. And you see, the problem is, I think many Sunnis have then not, because the Sunnis then will say, well, okay, who were see, the problem is, to being fair, when people say the bad guys were Banu Umayyah, many had historically extended it to also saying that includes Sunnis. So the problem is, on that side, they can have a narrative by saying, look, these people were oppressed, these are all the bad guys. The problem is, on this end, who are the bad guys? Because they can't say Ali radiallahu anh and his Shia were the bad guys, because that's not what they believe.
Okay.
And so how do they juxtapose it? What do they put in parallel? So this is where I think it caused a lot of confusion, because some people felt, obviously you got to imagine as well, there's going to be an anti-Shia sentiment as well in there, as there's going to be an anti-Sunni sentiment as well. So this obviously makes the waters even murkier. And then people, some people defend certain things. They've defended caliphs, but I don't think mostly Sunni scholars have defended Yazid. Okay, I don't think mostly they have. I think most of them refuse to call him a kafir.
But I do think that by saying, for example, Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi saying that it's the right of the Khalifa to, destroy the uprising, or to stop the Khuruj, this is indirectly, kind of indicating that Yazid is in the right. Because look, if we look at this as well, I understand the fiqhi perspective, Khuruj is bad, but we have to look at the kind of entire perspective of this, because with Imam Hassan anhu gave when he said to Muawiyah that you could be the caliph, it wasn't just a bay'ah, it was a treaty. So and by the way, I'm a Sunni as well, because I know people might think I'm a Shia. No, I'm a Sunni.
Sure. Okay. No, sure.
But what
it doesn't matter, even whoever. I mean, Sunni, Shia. It doesn't matter, because the question is legitimate. Yeah. See, I would say this is, if that is what's Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi. To be honest, it's been about 9 years, I think, since I've read the book.
MashaAllah.
And I don't recall the details.
Okay.
If this is how I recall it, that he doesn't say that. This is how I recall that he's saying that he's taking sides with that Hussein radiallahu anh shouldn't have gone because it put them in danger.
Right.
That's what I recall. But let's go with it is how you're saying, that he's saying that he's justifying Yazid's hukuma, let's say.
Okay.
I would say, this is my thoughts on that first of all, these are two different issues. One is people accepting in the time Yazid as the ruler. So when Muawiyah kind of gives him, is that a valid thing, or is this illegitimate in Islam? I would say, well, that's valid. It's not a good thing. It's not a nice thing. It's a wrong thing. There is no inheritance of leadership. Muawiyah doing that was mistaken, radiallahu anh. But he did it. Obviously, I understand it. At the end of the day, it's his son. And I'm sure he loved him immensely. And so he gave it to him. Okay. Now, and that's obviously, now Yazid obviously wanting to be it. Is this valid, even if it's bad? I would agree that most Sunni scholars say it was definitely valid, because the Sahaba accepted it. People like Ibn Umar pledged allegiance. It's in Bukhari and all these things. That's one issue which I would agree that it's valid. I'm not saying it was good. I feel it was wrong. Yazid should never have been Khalif to start off with. He was ineligible to be the Caliph. I mean, there were so many people, even if he didn't want to put it into the family of Ali radiallahu anh, there were other people, Abdullah ibn Zubayr, there were all these other people, Ibn Umar, there was all these. Yazid was not a candidate, and his thing was just a disaster, as Dhahabi says. He says it was just riddled with disasters from bad to worse. The Waqa'atu Harra, the assault on Medina, the Hussein radiallahu anh, the whole thing, everything, his whole thing was a disaster. So that's one thing. But the validity part, I would agree with the majority of the Sunnis that, if somebody becomes a ruler, it's not invalid, like they will just leave it, because otherwise this is going to lead to more bloodshed. Okay. The other thing, and the important thing, if Abu Bakr ibn Arabi is arguing this, I genuinely don't know if I don't believe he's arguing this, but if he is, let's say he's arguing that Yazid was right to have Hussein attacked, I would 100% condemn that and disagree with it. Right, because I don't believe they would have had any right to attack Hussein radiallahu anh, definitely knowing that he's coming not with an army. Okay. That's fine. If he felt like, let's say, as any ruler, that, oh my God, he's coming with something, he has the right to bring him in, to talk to him, to do these things, to ask him what's going on. But to have him attacked is an absolute atrocity. and it's a tragedy of Islam. And if any person, whether they're Sunni or whoever, says that I disagree with that opinion of this strongly,
Okay.
so Yazid would have had no right. If it's a different thing, I get the question. If a whole army came to fight, would he have the right to fight back? And that comes back to a different question. Not that I would agree with Yazid in any way, but I'm saying that's a totally different question. But here it was so clear. The armies very clearly knew that Hussein radiallahu anh was in no position. He was not with a kind of battalion, or they were just slaves mainly, and they were just family and stuff like this. It wasn't really a thing. So in that sense, and I know some Sunni sources say that Yazid didn't command that he only commanded him to be stopped.
Right.
I feel that personally, where I stand on this, I feel that I don't know if Yazid commanded for Hussein radiallahu anh to be martyred, but I don't know if he commanded him personally. I'm not convinced that he commanded that, but I don't think he was that bothered either. This is why I utterly condemn him. I'm not so certain he told them, as some people feel that he definitely told them, make sure you kill them all. And other Sunnis say that he didn't tell them that. I think Zahabi and all these people bring these things saying that he didn't really say that. And he claimed, because later on he brought some of the women folk and he brought them to his palace. And he said that, if I was there, I would have stopped it. And I never knew. And Ubayd kind of got carried away. And I never told him to do this. But then he doesn't punish Ubayd either. So the thing is that I feel that even if he didn't command it, I'm not certain he commanded, but I don't think he was that bothered by it. I think it was like, and I think that's, it's a tragedy. It's another tragedy in itself.
Right. I understand your perspective. But just to move on, on that though, I definitely disagree with you saying that because Yazid was, even though he shouldn't have been the Khalifa, because he was the Khalifa, therefore it's valid. I definitely disagree, because from my understanding, I think there's two perspectives to this. I think the first perspective is that that Imam Hassan anhu in the treaty, he did mention that it shouldn't just be made by his own decision, that it should be consulted with a bunch of the whole nation as well. And
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with all these things. I agree that even in his time, really, it should have been. I actually feel if in that time I'm to say, really, I see at that time Abdullah ibn Zubayr, because he already had people around him and they were already kind of working towards that, and they had something in process. And he's obviously, I don't feel he's more virtuous than Hussein radiallahu anh, but I feel because he had something in motion and it was there, he is therefore more deserving. This is why Suyuti actually puts him as a valid caliph, and I believe Abdullah ibn Zubayr was a valid caliph. But I just say this is just a philosophical discussion that the Muslims have had, that look, if a leader got in by force, now that he's a leader, should we all fight him and try and have an uprising against him, or should we just accept it? If, let's say, he got in by force, now he's taken over by force, but he's there now. So what should we do? So generally the ulama, their stance was that, look, fighting war is always bad. So long as we can still live, just like their stance has generally been that we won't kind of do an insurgency or uprising. I'm not saying that has to be a universal categorical always throughout history, but I'm just saying I can see why they say that in principle, because all of the caliphs have been like that. The Abbasids have come in like that. Everybody's coming. Whoever comes in just comes in by killing the other people and coming in. I mean, that's how they come in. So to say that every person who comes in is invalid, then obviously for them, you've got to understand that they're legit, then everything is like, there's no law, because the law is being, allegedly coming down, and the same, there is no king right now. So I get their argument. That argument, when I agree with it, it isn't a reflection of Yazid, who an utter distaste for, at the least to say, if not, repulsion for. But I accept their principle. They're saying that, look, Ibn Umar gave bay'ah because obviously it's in line with this principle. Well, we're not going to fight because, fighting just causes bloodshed. There's no good in war. They're saying that, look, these people, these Sahaba did it, Ibn Abbas did it. So let's just go with it. So I get that. But I'm not here to kind of really support this kind of thing, or I don't even, to me, the history, it's happened. The good has happened, the bad has happened.
So I guess we'll move on from this then. So the next thing I was going to go on to was, because I think you did mention, you had a clip of this as well, and you were discussing when Imam Malik mentioned that Sayyidina Ali, he kind of chased the caliphate, and then you mentioned, oh, well, look, if we're going to criticize other Sahaba, then let's make it kind of unconditional. Okay, so let's not place it for one standard and criticize Muawiyah or these other Sahaba and not criticize Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu. And I would agree with you, actually, philosophically, but I do disagree, and I'll tell you why. Because from my understanding, the Quran explicitly tells us we cannot even do this, because in Ayat al-Tayyib, it mentions clearly for me that the Ahlul Bayt are purified. So for this reason, we can't even.
Yeah, but you see, that's the problem. You see, the problem is you're doing it. You see, you're doing sectarianism, and this is the problem. You may be doing it unconsciously, but it's sectarianism, and this is the problem. My whole point of that video was I was saying that we shouldn't criticize any companions. Like, I've got a video called "Should We Criticize the Companions?" and I discussed this in there. And I say there's two ways, there's two doorways to take, two pills, if you like, the red pill, blue pill. And I say one is where we just venerate everybody. We only speak nicely of people because they were great people,
right,
and they've been before us.
No, but
and I say that's what I advise taking.
Because you see, the issue is if we're going to discuss this objectively, we have to look at this. And I'm a student of philosophy as well. I have a degree in philosophy, so I am very up to date with these kind of objective kind of truths. So the thing is, with
so what's the objective truth here? What's the objective truth here?
So, well, if we're going to talk from my epistemology, it would have to be
no, not your epistemology. Objective.
Yeah,
what's the objective?
No,
truth?
so my epistemology comes to objective truths.
No, objective is independent of your epistemology. Yes, how you ascertain the knowledge of something.
Yeah, what's your epistemology?
Now, no, but you said objective, then it's subjective.
Yeah, so
so what is the objective truth? What is the objective truth here?
Yeah, so my epistemology allows me to come to objective truths.
No, okay, but I'm not. That's okay, but what is the objective truth here?
I'm telling you.
What? Okay, sure, but what is it? Specify the objective truth.
I would put into three categories, and this is in line with Abu Mansur al-Maturidi rahimahullah ta'ala alayhi, he said, and that is, the first thing is empirical senses, second thing is mutawatir transmission.
No, put that aside. I haven't got a problem with that. Tell me what the actual thing is. Instantiate it.
Okay. So it's massively transmitted that that the Ahlul Kisa, them being purified. So therefore we can't even try.
How is that? Sorry, how is that? Them. No, but what you see,
no, because you're misunderstanding. So hang on. So I understand what you're trying to go. You're trying to simplify. Oh, we either criticize or we don't criticize, and
exactly.
Now I understand your point. I get it. I would actually agree with you, but the reason I'm disagreeing is because it's a premise. The Prophet ﷺ
where's the premise?
Pardon?
Where's the premise?
Yes, so the premise is that you can't. So one of the parameters, okay, which is making this more complicated and not as simple as we wanted to make it simplified, is that the idea of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam being ma'soom or mahfuz, depending.
How could look? Do you seriously believe that any person is infallible?
The Sahaba not
apart from the prophets. Do you believe this?
Pardon, sorry.
Do you believe in the infallibility of human beings? They can never make a mistake.
No. And if you
beyond prophets,
Mufti, if you listen to what I said, I didn't say ma'soom. I said ma'soom and mahfuz. I said depending on the lexicon meaning you take, because mahfuz and ma'soom can mean the same thing.
Sunni Muslims generally, we don't accept any human being to be infallible beyond prophets. So this argument that Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu is infallible is a Shia argument. We're not going to buy that argument. So I don't get why.
If you check Sabuni rahimahullah says ma'soom.
Yeah.
Wait. Sabuni says that ma'soom means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he makes the Anbiya alayhi salam ma'soom by necessity, because if they weren't ma'soom, they could lie, etc. But with then he says mahfuz, okay, and there's two types. But he says the first type is it's the same as ma'soom, so they cannot commit sin, but it's not out of necessity, it's out of generosity, okay. And then the second type is basically.
So let me get this right.
Okay.
The prophets have to be protected by God from doing it.
Yep.
But then there's other people who God doesn't even need to protect them. They're so good, they don't do it themselves. Their nature supersedes that of the prophets.
I didn't say they're so good. What I'm saying is
but
that
you just said by generosity. So that means by virtue, by their own virtue, they themselves
by Allah's rahmah
are infallible.
No, by Allah's rahmah. No, by Allah's mercy.
So let me get this right. So you're saying that they have a greater maqam than prophets.
When did I ever say this?
Because by virtue, if I'm saying that, look, I give. For example,
you're misconstruing the argument, Mufti Saab. You're saying that I'm.
But it is because look, if I said person A,
you're saying
so
I put
prophets
above the prophets. I never did this.
No, but listen to me and then tell me if you're not. Because category A is prophets. You're saying these people, God has prevented sins from coming to them. So they don't. It's not even about will or choice. It's not. It's destined. They're protected.
You have to.
So this by destiny, as in God has had to intervene and do this. Yeah. Now you're saying there's another category of people who God doesn't even need to intervene,
right?
Because they, by their virtue, are so great that they could never make a mistake.
I never
because God has bestowed this favor.
I never said their virtue.
So that sounds more virtuous than the prophets.
I never said their virtue. You misconstrue my argument. I'm saying by God's mercy, He can make individuals mahfuz. He didn't say ma'soom. Sibawayh mentioned.
Does God say this in the Quran?
Does God mention ma'soom in the Quran? In fact, the Quran actually has many verses which can indicate the prophets could sin.
So if you believe in that,
I don't believe.
If you believe in that,
I believe the prophets are free from all major and minor sins. I'm just saying that you want to use the Quran by itself.
Look, listen, Haydar. What? Look, you see, I haven't got a problem with you believing in whatever you want to believe.
Yeah.
I have no problem with people, you could say to me, look, I believe in this, I believe in this, I believe in this. But you have to understand that the argument of infallibility, whatever you want to call it, to the majority of Muslims, it doesn't make sense to us.
No, but you can't appeal to the majority. You can't. That's the fact. That's
no. Okay. But let's say
the majority, Mufti Saab.
Right.
You
so
deny
no.
Islam,
Right.
You deny
So
Imam Mahdi, doesn't
look.
The majority.
Listen. So no, but I'm telling you as a core belief, because the core belief in Islam is that.
I said it's dhanni.
But right. Okay. Of course it's dhanni. It's not in the Quran.
Exactly.
Right. So the thing is that, look, the point is that Muslims generally believe all human beings have accountability and all human beings are susceptible to err and all human beings do make mistakes. This is general Islamic belief across mainstream Muslims. Now, I get it that you could disagree. You could say, look, I am in line with the belief that the bloodline of the Prophet is sacred and therefore the bloodline of the Prophet are superhuman and can never make a mistake.
That's wrong.
It's not going to... Okay, they are super protected, mahfuz.
Yeah.
Now, the thing with this is that this super protection that they have, most Muslims, just because, look, Muslims love the family of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but that doesn't mean they place them in this kind of superhuman category. They don't. So they love them with all their heart. Like now. I don't, obviously, if you're trying to convince me or you're trying to convince me, fine. I mean, you can convince me. No. I don't believe in that. So I don't, I don't know what the point is of this whole thing.
Look, you see
because...
So you see the main discussion. So what I'm trying to say is that for me, Imam Malik, when he said that statement, I feel it's completely condemnable. I mean, I don't understand how because I see you as a rational person as well. I don't see you as entirely rational. I think you're partially rational. But I do see you as a person who is genuinely trying to find the truth.
Yeah.
And
you see, I've already answered that. Look, I've said, and this is a very rational, look, people who are watching this can make up their own mind. I've got a video and you can watch the video for more detail. I've said that there's two ways. Yeah. 2 doorways, 2 pills. One says you don't criticize any companion. You let it be, you venerate them. This is where I am. This is the pathway I take. Yeah. The other is that you say, no, we're going to apply critical lenses and a critique to all companions. I've said then by that measure, it applies to them all.
But Mufti,
it doesn't say, well, it's going to apply to Umar, it's going to apply to Abu Bakr, apply to Uthman, but not apply to Ali.
But Mufti, you're going against your own premise, because your usul initially was, your premise is that all humans make mistakes, and then you're saying, oh, well, let's take this other pill, and that is just to venerate all companions.
Yeah, exactly. But why is that contradiction? Because I clearly believe that all the companions were human beings, normal human beings. They were great human beings, but they were human beings. But if you're going to ask me, look, do I have to find mistakes in people? I don't have to do that. Why do I have to? Look, does a person sit around finding mistakes in their...
You have to accept, by your own usul and own admission, you have to accept individuals like Malik bin Nuwayra, Ibn Ubay. You have to accept these individuals as well by your own admission.
I do accept Malik ibn Nuwayra. Why don't I accept Malik ibn Nuwayra?
So you do accept Malik ibn Nuwayra as a Muslim?
I do. And I feel that personally, I do agree that Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh did tell off Khalid bin Walid. He did say to him that, why did you kill him? And he says, I thought he was going to attack me, because he says, Malik ibn Nuwayra says, idfa'u bi, he uses the phrase which the Meccan Arabic was used as a slang to attack. And in their thing, it was about gathering. And he meant gather the other people, not gather for an attack.
Okay,
but the point is, I agree that, people say that many Sunnis have said that Khalid ibn Walid radiallahu anhu.
For example, there's two examples. One is Abdullah bin Ubay, and another one is the Prophet sallallahu in the hadith. He mentions to Hudayf al-Yaman radiallahu anhu, there'll be 4 munafiqeen from my Sahaba.
Look, Haydar, listen. Do you really think we're going to resolve a Sunni-Shia divide? How can we do it, man?
I don't believe
we're not going to resolve it like this. Like, it's not going to happen. The only way we can resolve it, the only somewhat, is that we put differences aside and you try to move forward with some love, compassion, and common ground. You see, the dialogue is a moot point, because it just ends up with a point that we just disagree. So it's not going to be it's not a resolution. You see, we disagree on it. Exactly. So this is my point. To move forward,
because I think the issue is there hasn't been much academic discussion in these kind of things. I mean, if you look, there's always
believe me, it's not going to get anywhere. If you think academia is going to resolve sectarianism, I wish it would. I wish. It's going to only be resolved by the hearts. People are going to overstep academia and just see a human being and humanity and compassion. And the fact that, look, most of the deen we overlap is this similar. Like, okay, this has all happened. We can't change it. Whether a person agrees with the death of Malik ibn Nuwayra or disagrees with it, it's happened. Now we can't change it. Now we are where we are.
No, but Mufti, so what I'm trying to say is, sometimes when we make premises, we do oversimplification, and the two pathways that you've given is an oversimplification of the issue, because we have to understand.
But it's a pathway that works.
There's not a pathway that works. The Quran mentions Ahlul Bayt as purified.
Look, I don't want to see. We're going to get back to that moot point, because when the Quran mentions Ahlul Bayt, it's talking about the wives. Now you're going to say, well, the wives are not from the family.
That's fine.
Now we're going to come back to that same circular discussion. I don't want to discuss it, because to me it's like, look, where do we get with this? Where do you get?
You're a person of rationale. You're a person of. I think you're a person of usul. Okay. So I'm not trying to insult anything. I'm just trying to say I think you're a person of usul. I don't
think you're trying to insult me.
And by the way, if I've come off as rude,
I don't. Honestly, I don't think you're being rude or anything. I believe you're being very passionate, which I think I'm. You know what? I love to see people passionate about stuff, and I love that you've got an immense love, and and I feel in many ways envious in a nice way that you have this immense love for the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I think it's exemplary. But I understand as well that these arguments are not going to be resolved by you and me, or because nobody's going to, because it's just basically we've got two sides of a perspective. Somebody sees that side, somebody sees this side. This is why I do try to promote saying, look, let's just leave it all to just veneration, because, you know, and look at the similarities we've got. We've got so many more similarities than we've got differences. So, you know, if we can just move forward with that, thinking, look, it's one God, it's one prophet, it's one Quran. You know, it's like, even if we disagree, so what, on certain interpretations? Don't everybody disagrees? Sunnis between themselves disagree, Shia between themselves disagree. I might read the Quran and it hits me with a certain meaning. Somebody here might read it, hits them with a different meaning. This is the powerful, majestic nature of the Quran. So I think if we can move forward, like seriously, one thing I know for sure is that the message of the Prophet ﷺ would have been, and I know human things would have got in the way, because human beings, we're these human beings, there's going to be, you know, challenges and issues, and but the message of the Prophet would have been for people to try and oversee, to sideline the differences. That would have been the message. So that's, I think, I do honestly, I love that the passion where you're coming from. Obviously, I disagree with the points of view, and I don't think it's rude. I think obviously it's very contained, because you feel that, look, all these people have been wronged. And I agree with you that statement of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu an, that statement of Imam Malik about Sayyidina Ali radiallahu an, to somebody who, you know, is so immersed absolutely in this pure bliss of love for Sayyidina Ali radiallahu an. And I, like I said, I envy you on these things positively, because I feel that would be offensive to you. I feel it would be offensive to many people. I get that. I also understand that Imam Malik said it. I also understand that he had a context to it, but I also get that maybe people won't agree with his context and other people will. But it's just going to be that difference of opinion. But it's done. Everything is done. You know, we are in 2021, and we can't change it. So this is, so this is, honestly, I do. In fact, it's one of the things I want to bring on, inshallah, a Shia Imam. I'm trying to, on one of my mind traps, because I want to kind of try and create these bridges in saying, you know, there's differences, but at least there's some, you know, here's a bridge. You see, how do people move forward?
Because you see, Mufti, you know, I do think a lot of the times, you know, you talk about the school of Medina and stuff, and you know, with kind of your viewpoints and your kind of usul, I really do believe that you would have been better as a Hanafi, because I think you would have got away with a lot more of your views, which are a lot more against the majority, Jamhur and Ijma, etc. I think this is actually more in line with the kind of, you know, early Hanafi principles. I mean, I'm not talking about, you know, Ali Qari or these individuals, but Abu Hanifa himself, for example. So I was just trying to understand your logic and your perspective on these kind of issues.
I mean, the Maliki madhab is there, to be honest. And, you know, anybody, I do love the madhab, and anybody wants to study, it's there. Its principles are all known, its scholars are known, its attitudes have been well known. To be honest, if anything, I think my attitude, not my attitude, my tabi'ah, my nature does gel well with the school of Medina. I feel that they've always had these kind of, my thinking at times is a bit maverick, and they've always had these kind of maverick scholars. They've,
well, Ibn Rushd and stuff, right? Yeah. No,
but right down, really, if you look from Imam Malik himself, look how his principle of maslahah, of welfare, it's so, you know, blind. It's like, wow, you know, he's somebody who's saying, yes, you know, the rule says this, but what about the welfare? And people are like, what the hell? You know, it like shocks them. His thinking is so out of the box sometimes.
Yeah,
it's like somebody asked me the other day about, and I sometimes, out of, like I said, I may not practice certain things. Like somebody asked me the ruling of, you know, wearing something with like the name of Allah or something in the bathroom. And because Imam Malik's fatwa, once again, so thinking it's out the box, he says, what's wrong? You don't need to remove the ring that has the name Allah on it. And his point was that, well, you are just in nature, and God is everywhere anyway. Like, why would you need to remove it? Like, the Prophet had a ring, and he says, you know, he doesn't believe we have Sahih narrations. The Prophet used to always remove it. Look at his thinking; it's so kind of radical, and yet, even though I personally find a kind of disinclination to do something like that, you know, with the name of God in the truth, but I can see his thinking. Even when people saying, you know, you should do wudu, he says, well, don't remove the ring. What? Even if water doesn't get underneath, you don't remove it. Like, that's such maverick way of thinking, because he says, well, you only go by the apparent. The ring's the apparent. Wash over the ring, and.
Right.
It's this whole maslaha thing going right on to people right through the school who speak of things like Burzuli speaking of the changing of punishments in Islam because that's what the Sharia wants, to obviously Ibn Rushd, like you mentioned, to Qadi Iyad, to all these kind of people are just so, Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, another, all these people are just so, I feel, right down to Ibn Ashur of last century.
I'm actually surprised you mentioned Qadi Iyad there. I think he was quite traditional in his. I mean, I did read his was-Sifaat. I didn't agree with a lot of his points. I thought a lot of his points were kind of problematic, like the black magic point and all these other things. I really felt it was wrong.
Yeah. I mean, they are a product of their day and age.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that they, you see, agree with the Maliki thing that's gone before them, with all the disagreements. They kind of honor them and agree with them, and that's the kind of open-mindedness that but yeah, these are all things to learn. Haydar, it's been epic. Shukran, much love. I appreciate you. No, I haven't, honestly, and shukran for coming on. People, that was from Manchester. Haydar, well, we did get a bit carried away in that discussion. I see it's been quite a while. Let's wrap this up, people. It's been epic chatting. Yeah, but that was my summary. I genuinely feel that, honestly, I agree with a lot of people that say, I agree with the sentiment that the family of the Prophet ﷺ, many of them were oppressed. But I also agree with, well, nothing can be done now. This is history. You can't undo history. You can't say, well, this person, this happened to him, let's undo it. And just talking about it, I don't think creates a bridge. I wish it did, but it doesn't, because all it does is it then triggers the sectarian sentiment and people back forth. They're just hating on each other. And yeah, so my message is that, look, if anything can move you out of this, it's not going to be academia in my perspective. It's going to be just love. Okay. Ironically, the very thing that the argument is over. Love for who? As in, it's all about love in essence. And if we just return to that foundation of love, we can find a solution. People, let's wrap this up. Right. Shukran, those of you that have tuned in for this long. If you haven't already, if you haven't already liked and subscribed, people, do that. The usual. There you go. The world is what your thoughts make it. Allahu Akbar. That was right there, Sibawayh, people. Those of you that want to connect, somebody did ask me a question, Mufti, if I want to connect with you, well, there you go. If it's just simple questions, you've always got Instagram. If it's for a more personal one-to-one connection, you can go to Patreon. There it is, /MALM, and you can connect from there. You can just follow the instructions. It is also on my highlights as well. I've shared the instructions how to do that. Other than that, people, as always, it's been epic. Allah. And as we wrap up, usikum, my Naseeha to you, as always, أن تتفانوا في حب الله قبل أن تفنوا بحكم الله. People, ego death in the love of God. Take very good care of yourselves. Remember to smile. Salamullahi alaikum wa khuda hafiz.